out my troubles with the kitchen sink. I try my best to wash them down the drain, but I can see them rising up again. Over and over again. Every morning it's just the same. My head hurts, throbbing with this pain, as I'm hung over and over again. As I'm hung over and over again. I'm falling off that wagon, 'cause the road was a little rough. Feeling down, it's a drag, man, and I just can't seem to get enough. And I swore I'd never drink again, but then I saw her standing next to him. On my knees I fall into the ground. So adios, won't be seeing you around. Over and over again. Every morning it's just the same. My head hurts, throbbing with this pain, as I'm hung over and over again. As I'm hung over and over again.
Get ready, modelers. It's time for the one, the only ChadLee Show's After Hours RC Podcast. Your hosts, the outlaws of scale modeling and possibly model aviation all together, Chad Asmus and Lee Watkins.
I'm falling off that wagon, 'cause the road was a little rough. Feeling down, it's a drag, man, and I just can't seem to get enough. Hung over and over again. Every morning it's just the same. My head hurts, throbbing with this pain, as I'm hung over and over again. As I'm hung over and over again. As I'm hung over and over again.
All right, we're recording. I'm Chad.
All right. I'm Lee.
We're the ChadLee Show.
You got it.
We need to do like our own intro song where we actually sing it instead of doing the pre-recorded stuff.
And we're not going to have any more listeners then.
It would be it would be awesome. Let me edit. We're going on this new we're going to try not to swear thing, because it was brought to our attention that some of our listeners actually like their children to listen along and while they're in the workshop, stuff like that. So I mean, it makes sense. We want to be family friendly. It's all about bringing the kids into the hobby also, right?
Yep.
So we're going to try our best. Yeah, I can't make any promises, but I can promise we'll try our best. And I am making notes when I need to edit, so the intro needs an edit. we didn't even make it.
Almost made a minute.
Didn't even make it 10 seconds into the show, and we're having to edit swear words out already.
What's this wee stuff, dude?
Hey. So yeah, this is probably the poorest we've been prepared for any show yet. Not that we've had a whole lot of shows, but Leah and I just spent the last hour making the show notes. So we
some of us have jobs to go to. Others, I don't know what he does all day.
I tell you what, I was busy as heck. you know that huge dirt pile that was in my front yard, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
I just moved that whole thing in the last day and a half, I'd say. Spread it out in the backyard. Our backyard was low, so it would flood in the springtime. Now it's just going to flood my neighbor's yard, so I don't care because it's not my yard.
That's right. Until Rusty digs it back up.
Yeah, I got this dog that has a digging problem. He likes to run away. So we have a fenced-in yard, and we still have to keep him chained up in the fenced-in yard. It's terrible.
I know how that goes.
But I have been busy actually with the whole job hunt thing. Looking for a job, something to occupy my time, and I got 2 interviews now. One on Monday, tomorrow, and then one on Tuesday. So hopefully I get the job with the interview on Tuesday. Hopefully the people listening to this show isn't from the interview on Monday. Yeah. But no, both of them are both basically the same jobs. Field technician is what it is for industrial equipment. So that's one of my many college educations that I have. So
there you go.
So yeah, we'll see what happens.
I'm ready to use my put my college education to work here.
What?
You gotta get ready. This may be a long show.
I'll try and amplify it.
A little more. All right.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's like 2:00 in the afternoon my time. So 3:00 Lee's time. So I guess it's close enough to 5, right?
Yeah, I was 5 yesterday.
And it's part of the show. You can't do the podcast, an after-hour podcast, without having a beer or a drink or a bug juice.
Something like that. Yeah, we got to have some fun.
People were loving the Baileys that you had on the picture on the Facebook page.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Sadly, that bottle is no more.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you need to get me those 2 videos, so the files, so that I can get them loaded on YouTube, or you can load them on YouTube even. I'll give you the information. So that way it can be on our YouTube page also. Because for those of you that didn't know, I mean, most of you, I'm assuming, follow us on our Facebook page also. But Lee just did a couple of how-to videos. I've done a couple in the past. I haven't done anything recently because I've been working on my house trying to get all that buttoned up. But Lee did a couple to pick up the slack, so they've been going over pretty good. You did one on the master air screw balsa stripper. Yep. And then the other one was on just cutting.
Yeah, basically cutting with a basically a steel rule where you're cutting along and then all of a sudden the ruler slips. So a little tip to keep that from happening.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that one. But I got my own way of doing it. Maybe I'll put my video up too, and give you guys some more options. I don't use a steel rule like Lee used. I use a T-bar with some sandpaper on it. That way the sandpaper grips the wood. You know what I'm saying?
Well, see, Chad, if you'd have followed the video, that's what I did with it.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't watch the video.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah,
Spoiler alert.
That's a great idea, putting a little sandpaper on it. Man, maybe next time I need to watch it. I watched your first one. I lied. I didn't watch it. No, I did watch your first one, I think. I don't remember. Anyways, that's either here nor there.
The last one I did was with the new GoPro I had, too.
New Velcro? Oh, you can't hear me now.
I didn't hear anything, Chad.
Yeah, you said new Velcro. What are you talking about?
Do what, huh?
Can you not hear me?
Now I can.
Oh, new Velcro. What are you talking about?
The new GoPro.
Oh, new GoPro. Yeah, Lee got a new GoPro. So he can do some videos. That's what you used for the second video?
Yeah, I did.
All right. Fantastic.
Worked out a lot better.
I'll have to watch that for sure then. He probably can't hear me again.
I keep losing your sound again, Chad.
Yeah. Lee's got this stupid thing with this Skype. I don't know what it is. but I don't know.
Still nothing.
Anyway, so what we're going to
There it
be
goes.
doing, we're going to be doing the intro, what's happening, which we kind of got started on already. And then we're going to be talking about engines. And we got a crap load of different stuff about engines. We're going to be incorporating, Lee's in the toolbox, and my safety tip is incorporated with the engine. So we'll kind of just mix that in where it sees fit. And then we'll do your questions. We had a bunch of questions. We'll do notable events, which is going to be very quick, I'm sure, because I don't have anything.
Me either. Okay, that segment's done.
Yeah, and then that'll be the end of the show. And I got a guy, we had somebody who said they were going to do an interview with us, and then they never got back with us to set it up. I mean, so we kind of trying to make the show work without that, expecting that interview, which I'm sure we'll still get plenty of time because we can go on for days about engines.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we got. I'm going to try and get another guy on the phone here later on to see if he'll get with us, and maybe we can chit-chat with him a bit. I don't know. Maybe I'll just start calling random people until somebody answers the phone. Dang phone.
Hey,
Dang phone. So that's in the what's happening. Edit.
4 minutes and 32 seconds.
4:32.
I have no idea.
Actually, it's like 8. I'll say 8 minutes.
All right. You got the timer going.
Which all these numbers are going to be crazy by the time they listen to it because I'll be adding in stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, whatever. I know what I'm talking about. That's all that matters.
Hey, glad somebody does.
Yeah. The other thing, I took a look at the Tri-Pacer. You guys knew I was designing that. I think I'm going to hold off on finishing that. Mainly because there's another one out there. If I do the kit the way that I wanted to do the kit, it would require basically redesigning the whole thing anyways. I got a couple of other projects I want to do, so I think I'm going to hold off on the Tri-Pacer. There's still a lot of work that was left on it. I had to make all the plug stuff like that, so it's not like I was almost done with it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you said quite a bit of work left to do on that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I want to make some kits for you guys, but at the same time, it's been 4 years since I've been able to 100% do an airplane I wanted to do. Because of working at Balsa USA, I was required to do what would sell. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Definitely.
So the next one I'm doing probably won't sell at all because it's like Lee said, it's fugly.
That's the best ones, man. That's the best ones.
Yeah, but yeah. So we'll talk over all the engine stuff. Get into the questions. Yeah, we already did all that, so I'm just repeating myself now.
Yeah.
So I guess let me finish what's happening with me. I talked about my jobs. Got my suit cleaned at the dry cleaners because you gotta get ready for that. Made sure it still fit. But yeah, so what do you have going on, Lee?
Just work. My regular job has been going like crazy, so haven't been getting a whole lot of shop time in during the week and whatnot.
He likes to play with poo. He can't
Huh?
hear me. That's fantastic.
I can't hear you.
I can say whatever I want right now.
This is great.
He plays with poo.
I do. I'm a turd herder.
Oh.
All right. Let's get that right. But yeah, I have been working on the 39 here, so been lining the wheel wells and getting gear doors ready to start fabbing them in and letting them into the wing and whatnot. So it's slow but sure progress on it.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why did you strip the wheel wells instead of using a solid sheet of balsa?
Because it's fun.
Okay. I didn't know if there was a reason why you did it or not. I figured I'd ask for the people that may be doing it later on or in the future. And
My reasoning behind it, it was a little bit more controllable. Instead of trying to fight a full 3-inch or 4-inch sheet going in there. I was able to control it more. I will have more sanding to do when it's all said and done, but that was just my preference to do it so that way you get nice and square and the way I wanted it.
And that's the beauty of all this stuff is, there's no right or wrong way. It's all preference, and Lee's preference was to strip it. I may have stripped it or I may have used sheet depending on if I could get it to fit. Lee can't hear me right now, so I can say whatever I want about him.
Butterfly.
I definitely got to get over to his house one of these days so that we can figure out what's going on with his freaking microphone, or I'm going to make him buy a new one. Still can't hear me.
Man, I'm going to have to listen to this podcast to find out what's going on.
Let me.
Because I cannot hear a word you're saying anymore.
Let me see if I can get him on the cell phone. I'll just call him. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Do you want to call and do the cell phone thing like we did the last time?
You want me to?
Yeah, I'll call you. I'll put you on speakerphone. You can listen to me over the speaker, over the phone, and yeah.
All right, that'll work.
So.
I shut that one off.
Yeah, now I can hear myself twice.
Yay.
Let me find his phone number in here. I never call him, so it's not like he's number 4 on my speed dial list.
And that's good. Let's see. Put this one in. Oh my God! Chad's calling me.
That's fantastic.
Hello?
Can you hear me, buddy?
I can hear you now.
Fantastic. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
All right. So we'll just do it this way. I'm still picking up your mic, so this way you'll be able to hear me when I interrupt you now, too.
There you go.
So we got that worked out. I'm glad you guys probably left us during all that. But let's get into our main unless you have anything more that's happening outside of your wheel wells.
No, that's about it right now.
Fantastic. Let's get into the main topic, engines.
Alrighty, man.
Yeah, it sucks because the guy that we had scheduled for interview is an engine guy. He works for one of the leading engine manufacturers. So, but yeah, it is what it is. So, anyway,
He may show up sometime.
Yeah, you never know. First thing we want to talk about, and we're kind of breaking this down. We're going to do engine selection, talk about different engines out there, radials, twins, whether it be opposed, inline, 2-strokes, 4-strokes, single cylinders, glow. We'll talk on that a little bit. It's been a long time since I've run a glow engine, but I used to run them. So then we'll go into like breaking in the engines, oil, fuel, starting, maintenance, storage, all that kind of stuff. We got a crap load of questions off of it. So
Yeah, that's for sure we do.
and I think the biggest thing was everybody thought I set all my engines in sand.
Yeah.
Were you watching all those posts that I put up where people were questioning that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Why are you putting it on there?
And it's funny because when I looked at it after they said it, I see exactly what they were talking about.
That's just all the dust in your workshop.
No, I use paper that I put over my workbench, and it was just on that. The reason I use the paper on my workbench is so when I get glue and stuff like that on it, I just remove the paper, put a new piece on, and I got a fresh table again,
Yeah, I hear you there.
So yeah, engine selection. Let's talk about that a bit. Obviously, most kits and plans and stuff like that are going to have a recommended engine, And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Most of those recommended engines are way overpowering the airplane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
You could always go with the minimum recommended, and it would still fly fine. Some of them you may actually have to fly it on the wing instead of flying it on the engine, but...
Yeah, and that's the thing that we talked about a little bit on the last podcast, that everybody wants to overpower everything.
Yeah, well, And then...
To each his own.
Yeah, and then you get into if you're designing your own stuff, then what engines do you choose? And I'll tell you what I like to do for doing that. But yeah, so Lee, what do you look at when you decide you got a new airplane that you're starting, right? And you want to pick that engine that you're going to use because you need to know what engine you're going to use when you start to build so you can build for that engine. You can get the engine to build. What do you look for?
Basically, the first thing I'm going to look for is basically kind of what the size of the airplane, what the projected weights are going to come out, or if that plane's already been done, what weights people are coming out with. If you're coming out with a 65-pound airplane, you're probably not going to, and it's let's say a P-47 that's third scale or whatever. You're not going to obviously power it with a DLE 30 or 35 or whatever. You're going to have a little ump to it. So basically, that's one of the first things I look at an engine for my selections anyway, and kind of go with what size prop's going to be running it to. So,
do you have a particular brand that you like to stick with?
When I first got into the gasoline engines, my very first one was a US 41, which was pretty much a gutless wonder.
I had one of those on a PT-19 that later flew with a DLE 20 with more power than the US 41.
Oh yeah. And then after I kind of got really into it, then I've gone to Zenoa, and I've used them. They're pretty much a tried and true engine. They're a little bit heavier than most, because back then it was all just magnetos. You didn't have electronic ignitions on them. And I fly mostly warbirds, so you kind of needed extra weight up front anyway, so it didn't really matter a whole lot.
See, I want to stop you right there because I hate that saying when everybody says, pick an engine that weighs a lot because you need the weight anyways. And I don't go by that. I go by picking an engine that runs good, which is the Noahs do run good, and picking an engine that starts easy. But you can always add ballast to an airplane. And to be perfectly honest with you, you can pick a Zenoa engine, and then you can pick an electronic ignition engine like a DLE or a DA or Evolution or something like that. And you can actually make your airplane the overall weight lighter with an electronic ignition because you can get that weight more forward than, say, the weight of a Zenoa may be closer towards the firewall versus the prop if the magneto's on the back of the engine. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, that was one of my biggest things at Balsa USA. One of the techs would always say, oh, get a Zenoa engine because you need the weight anyways. Well, you can get by with less weight sometimes if you choose a lighter motor and properly place the ballast in a more strategic location.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed with Zenoas over the years too, they seem to tolerate heat better than some other engines.
Oh yeah, and they'll run forever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why Zenoa's still around, and I want to say they're probably the longest lasting engine that's been out there. I mean, Zenoas were way more relevant than even DA, I think, when it first started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so they're definitely the longest lasting engine manufacturer that I know of that's been on the front line, but that's gas, and I mean, OS, they have some gas engines, but they haven't had them out as long as the Zenoas, so they're tried and true. They're brutes, man. They'll last forever.
Yeah, they will. And another reason too is I live in South Bend, Indiana, and B&B Specialties. I don't know if people know about them or not. They were basically a Zenoa and a Quadra dealer. So, kind of what's in your area, you tend to use a little bit more of.
Oh yeah, they're a good group of guys. I've dealt with them quite a bit. So yeah. Any other things you look at or you want me to ramble on about what I look for?
You go for it, bud.
All right. When I start picking an airplane, I like to pick an engine that I'm going to get a good sound on if I can. I try to go for 4 strokes. It's a bit more money, but I think the sound really sells the airplane at the same time. I'm a huge fan of Satos, the Sato radial and the single cylinder Satos. They just have a great sound. They have a bunch of power, but the only issue is you're limited with the engine selection when you're looking at just that. But I've used DLEs, I've used DAs, I've used Evolutions, I've used Zenoa, I've used Quadra, US engines. I even had one that was, I don't even know what it was. It was a weed whacker that we converted back in the mid-90s or something like that. But yeah, so I guess I look more for what I want the airplane to do. I try to find the prop that I want to use for the airplane, the prop that'll fly the airplane, and then I'll pick the engine based off of that also, So I do a lot of the World War I, as you guys know, and, a lot of quarter scale World War Is, and 18.6 is plenty to fly an airplane, a quarter scale World War I. So you get a 18.6 that spins 6,000 RPM. Now I'll find an engine that can spin that 18.6 at 6,000 RPM, like a DLE 20 or a Zenoa G26 or the older G23s. I think the G23s are older, right? Or are those the newer ones?
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, one of them's older, one of them's newer. But yeah, I'll look for something like that, and then you can get into like the Sato 30cc 4-stroke works great on a lot of the quarter scale World War Is. And the other thing to look into is if it's a round cowl or if it's like a inline engine was in it, with a radiator or something like that, then you can go with different engines. I've used multiples. I like multiple cylinders just because it's fun and different. And I did when I was working at Boss USA, we did a D7 for Ali Machinchi, and we put a DA 100 in that an inline 100 in that I baffled, and I did a whole thing on Boss USA's Facebook about that.
Wait, I gotta stop you right there.
What?
That wasn't a DA engine. That was a Ferrari engine.
Man, that thing sounded like a Formula One car, didn't it?
Oh my God, it did.
But
if
it
you
put
guys
out
get
some.
a chance, look on my Facebook page or Boss USA's. We had put a post up there the weekend that Allie got that, and oh my God, that thing sounds like a little F1 racer running around.
I've never found a good inline engine that doesn't sound like a Formula One racer. Even the 4-strokes, I think, do. That who is that guy that had the third scale D7 the first year we went to Monticello? That black and white one?
Yeah.
Even that, it was a 4-stroke, and it still sounded like a Mustang flying through the air, not a D7. And that's the issue I have. And I actually looked at the D7 and tried to see if I could fit a radial in it, like the 84 or the 90 in it, just so you could get that more throaty, hot roddy sound out of it, which is what it would have sounded more like, because they were a lot of low revving engines, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Plus the full scale is only, turning 2,000 RPM at most.
Yeah, I think it was like 1,800 is what cruising was on it, And it swung a 9-foot prop though. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That is freaking huge. So, but you just think about that. You got a D7, something that I don't know what the weight was. Can you look up the weight real quick on a D7 on your internet?
On the full scale?
Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably somewhere around like 2,200 pounds, and it's swinging a 9-foot prop, and now you get these newer conventional planes that weigh the same weight, and they spin maybe a 6-foot prop, so, it's crazy the amount of torque that they had in World War I versus horsepower, even the rotaries. They swung huge propellers at a very slow RPM. And the slower you actually spin your prop, the more efficient your prop is. The faster you spin it, the more cavitation you get, and the less efficient your prop is. Did you find it at all, Lee?
I'm trying to pull it up here. The 170, 180 horse. I can't find the weight on it right now.
Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it
I got a
wasn't
bunch of advertising popped up here, so
yeah, it wasn't a crazy heavy airplane, so it was actually one of its techniques to get away from people was it would Harrier. And, a lot of people, they say, oh, that's not scale when you're flying in Harrier in a D7, but that's what it would do, and that was one of its fighting characteristics that made it so good, because the other planes couldn't slow down enough because they couldn't get into that Harrier. And as soon as the plane it was dogfighting against would fly past it, it would just drop the nose, throttle up, and be right on its tail to shoot it down. That's what made it so deadly.
Yeah, gross weight ended up being about 1,997 pounds.
Yeah, so I was pretty close with my 220 guess. So,
yeah.
And I mean, you look at a Cub's probably lighter. It's probably more towards like the 15, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I don't know exactly, but I mean, and there you go. A 65 horse that spins a 6-foot prop, versus a 195 horse or whatever it was that spun a 9-foot prop. And I mean, to see a 9-foot prop on a conventional airplane would be crazy.
Oh yeah.
So
definitely.
I mean, you're talking like the big radials and stuff are spinning those, I don't know what a Corsair spins, but that's probably the biggest prop when you have to make a gull wing so that you can get prop clearance for an airplane after you make it a 4-bladed prop too, I mean, that's crazy. So yeah.
Sure.
And then I guess I went off on a crazy tangent there, didn't I? Back to engine selection, there's a lot of alphabet engines out there, I like to call them. You have DLE, you have DA, you have DLA, you have CCRC. You got RCGF. There's crap loads of them. ESM is another one. And a lot of those are good engines, and people have real good luck with them. And they'll say, oh, all you have to do is, replace the rings with Bowman rings and sand the reeds and do all this, and they run great. Well, if you're an engine guy, that's awesome. Wouldn't you agree, Lee? If you're an engine guy, that's fine and dandy. But I want to take an engine. If I'm paying a couple $100 for an engine, I want to take it out of the box, put it on the firewall, flip the prop a few times, and hear the thing run. I don't want to have to rebuild it as soon as I buy it.
Exactly. It's like buying a used car,
Yeah. So, I don't know. I like to buy an engine that I know is going to run, and I've personally had good luck with Sato engines. I've had good luck with Evolution engines. I've had good luck with DA engines. I've had good luck with DLE engines. I've had good luck with Zenoa engines. I would have no issues recommending any of those engines to anybody.
Yeah. I'm the same, Zenoa, and back in my glow days, I did run a lot of Sato 4-strokes. So, I did have really good luck with those. The DLEs, I've been using them quite a bit, and they're actually a good bang for the buck,
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on engine selection. I guess I'm going to go into when I design a plane, how I choose the engine. I guess I look at, there's a lot of airplanes out there that are comparable to what I'm designing. I got a bomber that I'm looking at designing next, and I look at, take the specs of the real one and compare it to specs of the similar size that's already out there, stuff like that, and I compare that way. But mainly it comes down to what it's going to weigh, wing area, wing loading, to what I decide I'm going to put in it,
Yeah, and it also depends on how you're going to fly the airplane, too. If you're going to fly it in a scaled manner, or if you're going to, hot rod it and try to fly the wings off of it, that's going to be your personal preferences as far as engine selection. And the trend right now is everybody wants to try to squeeze as much. Well, I can't say it's a trend now. It's been that way forever. That everybody wants to squeeze in as much horsepower as they can. So they can either go as fast as they can, or just turn in a bigger prop so that it looks scale and whatnot. Everybody likes to go fast. So the bad thing with that, with some of the airplanes, you can overstress the airframes when you start putting that much horsepower in there, because the plane was not designed around that much horsepower. So you can run into issues with, just the plane failing in flight, wing breaking or fuselage, firewall coming loose. So you want to take that kind of stuff into consideration too. So just like my P-39, where I put the engine at, there was no firewall. It was just basically a standard light ply former. So I ended up making a good size former to go in there, half-inch firewall.
It's going to be a long show, man, if I have to keep getting up every 30 minutes to go to the bathroom.
Man. It's a good thing you're learning from me, buddy.
Oh, boy. I don't know. I'm sure Lee was rambling about something.
Oh, yeah, I do.
If not, I'll just edit it out.
There you go. I seen you run like a little schoolgirl out the door, so.
Man, I damn near wet myself. I was trying to wait until a spot where I could take a break, but it's like, man, Lee's talking. I'm going to take advantage of it.
There you go. That works.
So did you have anything more you wanted to add in on engine selection?
No, I was just telling about how everybody wants to put a bigger horsepower in and whatnot, where they can start overstressing the airframes and whatnot. Trying to squeeze too much horsepower, and beating the heck out of it.
Yeah, and I want to go on that too real quick. It's going to be another tangent, but it is part of engine selection. A lot of people like to put these huge motors on, like Lee apparently said while I was gone, and having a big engine is okay. The size of the engine doesn't destroy the airplane. It's the misuse of throttle that does, or cause an issue, And there's a lot of people out there, and I've seen it, and I've dealt with it on the phone, where they can't slowly move up the throttle. They just jam it straight up. And now you have an oversized engine on there. It's got a lot of torque that plane can't necessarily handle or wasn't designed for. And all of a sudden they say, well, every time I throttle up, it wants to turn off to the side of the runway. And if you're going to have a big engine on, you have to be able to use the left, or I should say the throttle stick, for those of you that fly different modes. But you have to be able to use the throttle stick and vary the throttle. It's not a toggle switch.
Yeah. Not out of control, I guess would say.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of people, and go out to the flight line and actually pay attention. There's a lot of people, they could fly their airplane on a 3-position switch. They have idle, they have takeoff, which would be all the way up, and then they have when I need to come in for a landing, where it brings it back a little bit. And that's all they use.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm constantly moving the throttle stick. And there you go. I mean, if you want to fly full throttle all the way around, definitely go towards the lower end of the spectrum. If you want to use your throttle and fly it like you would fly a real airplane, where you actually move the throttle stick, then you can get into the bigger sized engines if you want to be able to spin a more scale size prop or something of that sort,
Yeah, definitely.
So, which and I don't want to make it seem like there's something wrong, I mean, if that's how you fly, that's how you fly. Just make sure you choose your engine appropriately for your flying style and the way you fly, because you can very easily overpower an airplane so much, like Lee said, and overstress the airframe, tear the wings right off of it, for crying out loud. I've seen it happen plenty of times.
Yep.
So. Yeah,
especially when they don't have spars in them.
Don't have spars in them.
Up at Lansing, Michigan this year.
Oh, yeah, that Corsair.
Yeah.
That was freaking crazy. let's.
Oh my God.
There was a guy up there. He must have been pulling 20 G's with a Corsair. It was like a 120-inch Corsair, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good size one.
And it had a foam wing, and there was no spars in it. It was just straight foam sheeted, you know. And I guess the sheeting's kind of like a spar, and I know the main stress of the spar is on the very top and the very bottom of the spar, you know. But still, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And the wings folded on it. I hit the deck, man. I thought a shotgun was. I thought we were under attack. I thought I was back in Afghanistan. We were getting mortared.
Yeah, no kidding. It definitely stopped everybody what they were doing and made them look up.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. So it was spectacular, though. I mean, the fuselage pitched up just a little bit because he got close to the ground, and he must have got scared of the ground, is what I'm guessing. And he quick yanked back on the stick, the elevator, and it pitched it up and snapped the wing at that moment. So it was at the perfect angle for the fuselage to just shoot like a rocket.
Oh, yeah. And it had to have picked up like 60 mile an hour instantly.
Oh, man, it was great. It was spectacular. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. All right. The
move
next
on to
thing,
break-ins.
Yeah, let's move on to break-in. That's enough with selection. If you guys have any more questions about selection, by all means, message us on Facebook, something like that. We'll answer them. No worries. Yeah, break-in. There's a bunch of different methods to break in. A lot of them are good. I don't know if there's really one right way to do it. But what do you do, Lee? I'll let you start again.
A lot of times what I'll do, if I get a brand new engine, I'll actually bolt it to my workbench out in my garage and just make sure that the thing runs. I'm not running it for 3 tanks of fuel or anything like that. I'm just making sure that it's, once I put it in the plane, I go out to the field, I don't have to spend, 45 minutes flipping a prop trying to get the thing to prime fuel or anything like that. I'll put it in the airplane and fly it. And,
I don't do that. I put it on the airplane right away, but I do start it at home before I go out to the flying field once it's on the airplane and stuff. But I don't think I've ever bench ran an engine. Yeah.
I did a few times, and to be honest with you, I wasn't real super happy doing it that way. It seemed like the engine got a lot hotter than it normally would have.
And that's exactly it. You don't have the airflow over like it does when it's in the airplane. When your engine's in the airplane, it's moving forward, so you're getting nice, clean air. It's not just the air that the prop's pushing over it,
Yep, definitely. So that's the way I break mine in, is usually in the air and whatnot.
I just baby the plane a bit while it's a new motor, get a few tanks in it before I start really abusing it, And it gives you time to feel out a new plane too,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be flying the thing wide open all the time anyway, so, just let her go, run her a little rich, and go from there,
Yeah, I normally, for the most part, I'll tune the motor into maximum RPM, and then if I'm breaking it in, I'll back it off, 500-600 RPM, richen it up so that it loses about 500-600 RPM, and that's normally from what I found, a pretty good spot to break it in. It's going to spitter and sputter and not have the throttle response like you normally want, but it still works good,
Yeah, you're definitely not going to be going out in 3D and stuff with it, that's for sure.
No. But at least I know I'm getting enough oil through it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, especially on a brand new engine. You want to make sure you get plenty of oil to that stuff, because everything's mating in, seating in. There's a lot of metallurgy going on while I was running.
And this is the other thing, is a lot of these engines are shipped when you buy them brand new. They're shipped with just enough oil to keep it from rusting.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily as crucial on a 2-stroke, but on a 4-stroke, you need to put oil into the crankcase and spin it over 3 dozen times to get enough oil through there. Like my Satos, I've got a couple of 84 cc's. I've had really good luck with. I got a 40cc I've had really good luck with. And what I like to do is they have a crankcase vent on them. And I'll pump 20cc of my Redline oil straight into the crankcase. And I'll flip it over and let that oil get all the way through. That way it's not starving for oil for that first 15 revolutions while it's firing, and getting warm before it gets the proper oil into it. There's a lot of parts in a 4-cycle engine that it needs to get to. It needs to get to. I'm having a terrible time talking.
Have another beer, buddy.
Oh man, I tell you. But yeah, so.
But you got a very valid point, Chad. With putting oil in there and stuff. If nobody believes us, look on YouTube at rebuilding the car engine and watch them build. Throw the bearings in there and stuff. They're putting the oil in there as they're building it, because you want oil on all the contact bearing points and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with having too much oil to begin with.
I agree, and I mean, even if it smokes for a little bit when you first run it up, I'd rather it smoke knowing that there's too much oil in it than it not smoke and score the walls knowing that there's not enough oil in it. And I love the Satos, and I'm going to push the Satos because I've had real good luck. I love them, and there's certain ways to run them. I run them rich. I think the 84. It says like 3 turns out on the high end or 3.5 turns out on the high end. I'm like 5 turns out on the high end. It spitters oil all over. But if you don't have oil coming out of your exhaust, that means you don't have oil going through your whole engine. Because if there's no oil coming out of the exhaust, it's burnt up before it gets to that point.
Yep.
That means you're running at least half a stroke, which is your exhaust stroke, without oil, plain and simple.
Exactly. Yep.
And you can call DA, you can call any of the manufacturers out there. They will tell you the same thing. If you don't have oil coming out your exhaust, there's no oil in that exhaust stroke when it's pushing it out, because it would push that oil out if there was some in there.
Yep. Most definitely. It's just like a 2-stroke glow engine. You're spitting oil out the whole time. So,
yep. So I don't know. I don't do the whole different types of oil for breaking in. I mean, a lot of people I know, they use the Lawn Boy ashless and stuff like that. I'm a Redline guy. I've tested different oils. I never was I used to use a lot of Klotz and a lot of Amsoil. And then I got turned on to this Redline, and I did testing on the same engines in the same planes, and I would run it with my old oil in it and temp it, and then I would run it with the Redline oil in it, same exact mixture, and temp it. And there was, some were 5-degree difference, some were a DLE 35 in the Junkers, the prototype Junkers. That was almost 17 degrees difference in engine temperature just by switching from it was Klotz at the time to Redline and running the same mixture. 17 degrees cooler. I mean, you can't beat that.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but that is a lot.
That is massive.
Yeah. So, I mean, if people are thinking 17 degrees, that don't mean much. No, it does mean a lot.
17 degrees can mean seizing or not seizing your engine.
Oh, yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
The Junkers would run about 235 on Klotz with the DLE 35. And I lost 17 degrees when I switched over to Amsoil, which brought it into a more realistic engine temperature, because 235 is kind of on the warm side.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing, like you're saying, seems like they can tolerate the heat a little bit better. Yeah, the heat's one of the biggest killing factors of our engines, too.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, heat is your worst enemy. The cooler you can run a motor, the better off you're going to be, within reason anyways.
Yep, definitely.
So, but yeah, so I'm a big Redline guy. And the other thing, I run the mixture that the manufacturer runs. I don't care what anybody else out there says. DLE says to run 30. I think theirs is 30-1. I run 32-1 because I'm American. But that's what I run. I run the 30-1. Sato says to run 15 or 20 to run. I run the 15-1 oil in it, and it runs great. Why not run exactly what the manufacturer recommends? I mean, they're the ones who designed the motor. They've done way more testing than you've done on that motor. So why would you switch it up?
Yep. Exactly.
So I know you like to run a little leaner mixture than I normally run, don't you?
I'm sorry, say that again, Chad. It broke up a little bit.
You like to run a little leaner mixture than I normally run, don't you?
I usually use 32-1.
Yeah. All right. So we're about the same. Yeah. I mean, in my Satos, I run 15-1. I could switch it to 20-1, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. The engines run great, so why change it? I mean, if it's running good, performing the way I need it to perform, why would I change the oil mixture in it?
Yeah, definitely.
You know? So,
and I know there's some of the synthetic oils that guys are running 100-1 or 50-1, something like that. That doesn't make me all warm and fuzzy when I hear that.
No.
So.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I know a guy. He runs a DA at 100-1. And the engine is 15 years old, never been rebuilt, still runs like a champ. That's fine and dandy. But you know what? How many other people can say that? And there's always the one guy that has the good luck like that. But I'm always the guy, my engine's going to seize up. I'm going to send it in. They'll know right away if you starved it of oil.
Yep. For sure.
But
For sure.
Yeah, and DA's done a lot of testing too, and there's a bunch of scientific reasons to why you want certain oils for certain temp ranges and stuff like that. It's all got to do with the flash point of the oil and how stable it is at those certain heats, because you don't want it to burn, but you don't want it to completely flood out.
Yep. Definitely.
So
you wanted to do its job.
But yeah, I'm a red line guy. What oil do you usually?
Up until this year, I was running a lot of Pennzoil, air cooled.
Yeah.
Which I know Rotax had specified for Rotax engines, so I thought, well, we'll give that a try. It was fine. I didn't have any major issues with it, but after us talking to DA and stuff like that, and some of the information that he gave us, that's kind of when I made the switch over to red line. So
yeah, I don't know. I've had real good luck with it. I'm not gonna lie. Now I haven't used it for a million years, so I mean this is just based off of what I've been running it for 2.5, 3 years now. But I've noticed a huge difference in my stuff.
Yeah. And prior to that, I was using clots, and a little bit of Amsoil when I could get it. But yeah, for the most part, that's what I've used. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I never had an issue with clots. I never had an issue with Amsoil. The reason that I say I like the red line better is because I was plain and simply able to, with my own two eyes, see the difference, and I mean it was a difference that made me happy. So to me it's worth it,
Yeah.
So
sure. When
you're able to physically see it, which we kind of jumped over. Let me jump back into the break-in. I want to talk about the Sato radial engines because there's a lot of stuff online about how they like to seize up and stuff like that. I just want to tell people, unless you are running them properly, I've never seen anybody have an issue that runs it straight, stock out of the box, the way the oil is recommended, the way the needle valves are recommended. I've never heard of anybody have an issue with it. When you first get it, take it out of the box, dump 20 cc into the crankcase, like I said, flip it 36 times or so, and before you fire it up. Ray English has a mod that you can get. I don't recommend it. Every engine that I've seen seize up or have issues had the Ray English mod on it. I've got 2 of them now that, I mean, I have crap loads of hours on both of them. One of them in my Newport, which you can see, and they run like a champ. I don't have any mods done to it. All my cylinders run within 5 to 10 degrees of each other, closer towards the 5 degrees normally, and I tempt it for the first 20 hours of running on my Newport. After every flight, I temped every single cylinder and recorded it to see where all my cylinders were at. Everything was always fine. But there again, I'm doing exactly what the manufacturer recommends. I run 15 to 1. I'm running it a bit richer than what they recommend, but it runs fine. I would never run it any leaner than what they recommend. And yeah, I've had great luck with it. I mean, you've seen it, right, Lee?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
you get a little extra oil come out, but hey, that's not a big deal. I'd rather have that than a engine that seized up and not working.
oh yeah, and I'll be perfectly honest with you now. After I got a crap load of hours on it, even the oil's starting to die down. That's coming out too. The black. It's starting to. It's.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're really broke in now. There's no
Yep.
doubt about it. And a lot of the black, when people are getting crazy amounts of black, that's just your engine breaking in. That's the aluminum in the oil. That's not the
aluminum
oil
wearing,
itself.
yeah.
Yep. And if your engine's running clean, and then all of a sudden one day you notice that it's got a crap load of black, check your muffler, check your bolts, make sure everything's tight, because that's a sure sign that something loosened up on you.
Yep. And the black is the sign of the aluminum. So.
Yep. So
Definitely.
I don't know.
And another thing with break-in too, a lot of people think that 1 or 2 tanks of gas is gonna break an engine in on a gasoline engine anyway. You're nowhere even close.
Yeah, you'll have hours into it. You'll probably have 5 gallons into it before it's broke in, depending on the engine.
Yeah, and how you fly it and whatnot too. But it's kind of funny sometimes. I had one engine in particular. It was my 3W75 or 80. Instead of flying around for a year, and then one day I'm kind of flying about halfway through the flight, the thing went from like first gear to second gear. I mean, that's how the engine performed. I mean, it was like, oh wow, it came alive. So, and that's kind of when I knew it broke in.
I had that with my Evolution engine. I had the Evolution 33 and the prototype Smoothie XL. And, when we first fired it up and flew it, I flew it to break it in. I didn't break it in on a bench. And it flew it around great, but it didn't have, I wouldn't say crap loads of power. It would have been closer towards the bottom end of the power for say a 33 sized engine, But I tell you what, it was like one day I put a supercharger on it, is what it seemed like, and that thing just started screaming. And I mean, I must have gained almost 1,000 RPM out of it. It seemed like, and it went from flying the Smoothie mediocre to I had unlimited vertical. I mean, unlimited vertical, and that thing was a rocket. It was great. I loved it. But there again, I mean, that's another engine. You have to have the stuff right. The Evolution engines I look at, they're designed more like a glow engine that's converted to gas. So you have the fins are a lot closer, which makes them tend to want to overheat more, which is where the red line is crucial. And they even recommend red line in their engines. But there again, it's I run it the way the manufacturer said. I've never had an issue. And we got a question on one of the Evolutions that we'll get to in the Freedom of Information Act. But yeah, you guys just need to run the engines the way the manufacturers tell you to run them. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. They didn't design it, unless they're engineer that designs engines and can tell you every little bit of metallurgy that's in there, the tolerances, everything that they said. Why would you listen to them versus somebody who designs it for a living?
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. Do what the manufacturer says. Gosh darn it.
That's right.
You hear that?
I like
that
it.
gosh
I
darn
like
it.
I like that.
So
You get a gold sticker on that one, buddy.
hey, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. We're trying to make that. I might even be able to pull the explicit rating off of our podcast on iTunes and stuff now.
Yeah.
Man, that'll be awesome, eh?
There you go.
But yeah, I don't know. And I think actually, I'm looking at this Moki that I have sitting here. I think that one recommends like 40 to 1 is what they recommend. So guess what I'm going to run for an oil mixture in it?
Yeah.
40 to 1.
They know best, And they're the ones that have all the engines out there.
I agree. It sucks having to carry around 3-4 different cans of gas because you have 3-4 engines that run different mixtures. But I'm telling you guys, I don't have engine problems out at the field. I have never gone to a field and had to ground one of my airplanes because the engine isn't running. I couldn't get it started. It kept overheating. I've never had that issue.
There you go.
So, part of the cooling issues is a lot of people try to maintain too scale of a look, and I'm not afraid to cut a hole in my cowl so that I get proper cooling, because as much as I call myself a scale pilot, I would rather fly the plane than have it look good on the ground.
Yep.
So
I agree. I've got one of those.
Yeah, that was your Spitfire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked great, looked super scale, but it sucks when you can't fly the plane because it keeps overheating on you.
Yep, definitely. Definitely. So, and that was one of the ones that I could fly it 2 or 3 times in a weekend and no problems whatsoever, and then the temperature went up 10, 15 degrees, and that was game over. I'd be dead sticking just because I was on the border the whole time.
And that's the thing. I mean, these are all air-cooled engines, so the ambient air temperature makes a big difference in the actual temperature of the engine when it's running. If it's a warmer day, your engine's going to run warmer, plain and simple.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of us tune our engines at the beginning of the year, and a lot of people will tune it based off of temp, I've seen. And I can tune it to a certain temp when it's 50 degrees out, but now I go to 90, 100 degrees, and I'm gaining 30 freaking degrees on my engine. You know what I'm saying? That takes it from running okay to overheating and destroying my motor.
Yep.
Sure. So yeah, you want to do your in the toolbox quick?
Do you want to do the oil and fuel first, or?
No, we're going to do it before. Yeah. I mean, we kind of started talking about oil and fuel, but I think now would be a great time to do the in the toolbox. So let's take. Okay, go. Lee, where are you going? We're trying to do a show here. Oh, I guess it's time for In the Toolbox with Lee Watkins.
All right. Today's In the Toolbox. We're going to do what we call, or what's called a ratio right oil mixer. And basically what it is it's kind of like a mixing cup, if you will, that's graduated. So you're going to end up putting your oil in there, and they'll give you, whether it's 32 to 1, 40 to 1 per gallon, or 2 gallons, 3 gallons, or whatever. We'll definitely put a link up in there. This way you definitely know, you're coming in right. I know there's a lot of single serve oils that they come X amount of oil to that container for 1 gallon of gas, and they'll give you 32 to 1 or 40 to 1. But if you're buying oil in bulk, like gallon size or quart size or whatever, this is one of the things. It's handy to have. That way you definitely know for sure that you're putting the right amount of oil in there for yourself, because you definitely want to make sure you have the right amount of oil. So this takes all the guesswork out of it. You're not putting it in a separate cup and trying to pour out what you think is 1 ounce or 4 ounces or whatever. So we'll get that link up there so you guys can see what we're talking about. And they're fairly cheap. I'm looking at the one on Amazon right now, and it is. Let me get my screen to work here. I think it's like $13. So it's not a deal breaker by any stretch of the means. So I think $13 in the hobby is pretty cheap.
It is. I agree.
So that's what we got for In the Toolbox. So, and the In the Toolbox segments, we're going to try to keep, Chad kind of touched on it already. We're going to try to keep it with the topic of the whatever theme we're going with. This week is going to be engines, and next week it might be, who knows. So
yeah,
it might be muffler bearings. So
muffler bearings.
Yeah,
man, I hate it when those things seize up.
Man. Oh yeah, don't forget to start using winter gas instead of the summer gas. It is very important. So,
all right,
that's what we got for In the Toolbox.
Hey, you got anything more on oil and fuel?
The fuel. One thing that I've run across personally is the ethanol that's in our fuel.
Oh yeah, yep.
And wreaking havoc with the carburetors, the diaphragms, and the seals and stuff like that inside of our carburetors and whatnot. There is a website you can go to. It's called pure-gas.org, and it will give you you can pull up your state and whatnot, and your city and whatnot, and it'll tell you who sells non-ethanol gasoline. That way, it works pretty good. Shh. There you go. I hear you. It is about that time. But anyway, I have noticed that in the past few years that the ethanol in the gasoline does deteriorate the rubber gaskets and seals and diaphragms in the carburetors, where your engine won't run good at all. Some of the carburetors actually have a rubber tipped needle in there, and I've seen where the needle is actually pulled apart, that rubber tipped needle, and the engine runs like crap, or it won't even pull fuel because that rubber is stuck in the seat.
Yeah.
So you want to use good gas with it, and even the good gas, they basically tell you don't want to use it any longer than 2 months during when you buy it. So whatever you buy, use up within 2 months, just so it doesn't go bad. There is one that I've heard of. It's still, I think it's called Moto Mix or whatever. There's a lot of different people coming out with pre-mixed gasoline at the Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff like that. I know the still is rated for a 2-year shelf life on that. So,
with that being said, though, you don't know what they're putting in it for oil, and they're going to use what they have listed, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be the top of the line stuff, because they're making volume. I mean, they're trying to bring a product that's cheap enough to put on the shelf.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would rather have that control of being able to put my own oil in it. Yep. and go from there. So I know personally that if there's somebody to blame, it's going to be myself, not some manufacturer 4,000 miles away or whatever.
Exactly.
And whatnot. So, but anyway, that's why I had it on the fuel.
Another thing that I want to bring up about the fuel is whenever I fill up my gas can for my airplanes, I make sure to put 3-4 gallons in my car before I fill up my jug, for the simple fact of how much of the alcohol because a lot of times it's like the premium is alcohol free, and anything below that is has up to 10% alcohol, or at least by us. So unless the person right before you used premium, which chances are they didn't, all that is still in the lines. So by putting 3-4 gallons in my car, I'm clearing out the lines before I fill up my jug for my airplanes.
Oh, definitely. I agree with that 100%.
Yep.
And whatnot.
So, yeah.
And another thing with that ethanol, too, like the Tygon and stuff, it does seem to affect that where it's super hard over time. So
well, the Tygon, what ruins the Tygon is not necessarily the liquid, but the fumes of the gas.
Yep.
And I can tell you from experience, I've done testing. I leave my gas tanks with gas in them when I store during the summer. You know, if I'm going to be going flying in a couple of weeks, I'll leave the gas in the gas can or in the gas tank, just because it keeps Tygon from hardening up as quick. It's when you empty it all the time and you get the fumes, that's when it sucks all the moisture out of the Tygon, which is what hardens it up.
There you go.
So,
There you go.
and there's some Tygons out there that are medical grade that won't harden. They're claimed to guarantee not to harden through the fumes and stuff, through chemicals and stuff like that. I've personally never used them, but I've seen them and I've talked to vendors that sell them and stuff like that. The other thing I recommend is in your gas tank, use Viton fuel line.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely more expensive. It's probably, 3 to 4 times as much as Tygon.
You got a terrible
What?
connection right now, or what, Lee?
I don't know why.
You sound
see.
terrible.
Yeah, my connection's gone down. It's very slow.
Ah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
Go ahead and chat for a minute. Chad,
yeah,
I'm gonna go see something real quick.
let's do this. Let's take a quick break. I'll throw in a commercial.
All right.
We'll jump back into where we're at. All right.
All right, sounds good.
See you in a bit, guys. You know what that means. It's time for a safety tip from the ChadLee Show. All right, so with that sound, you guys know it's time for our safety tip. My safety tip this week.
Doesn't involve me quite yet.
No, this time it doesn't involve Lee at all.
All right.
But the safety tip this week is on starting your engine. You know, whether you use a starter, a chicken stick, something of that sort. A lot of people go out there and flip it without any protection on their hand. They'll flip their prop. And yeah, you can get away with that, but you know, you can get away with a lot of things, and that doesn't make it right. I'm notorious for flipping with my bare hand. I'm pretty sure Lee is also. Right, Lee?
Yep.
What's
Oh,
the
yeah.
matter? Taking a drink when I have you try to talk?
What? Yep.
But, I mean, there's a bunch of different companies out there that make chicken sticks. You can make your own homemade one with a piece of rubber hose on a dowel. You know, it's basically just something to stick in the prop so you're not sticking your hand in there. You know, another good thing that works is a good heavy leather glove. If it does catch you, you're going to feel it, but it's not as likely that it's going to cut you. You know, we know one guy, Noel Hunt. He uses a freaking hockey glove to start his airplanes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't say nothing because it obviously works, right?
Yep. Yeah,
I mean, it's got good protection, good padding, stuff like that. You know,
and he still has all of his fingers.
yeah. And then, you know, the other thing you can use is a starter. I've used a Sullivan Megatron starter quite a bit. Yep. I have mine hooked up to a 4-cell LiPo. You can get their box, or you can just do like what Lee does, and he just has Velcro holding his battery to it, right?
Yeah. When
Yeah,
it
and
holds
you-
on.
Yeah, and you use a 3-cell, don't you?
I use 3-cell. It really needs a 4-cell, but
Yeah.
a 3-cell will turn over a G62 no problem.
Yeah, and all it's doing is changing the RPM too, you know. But Lee can't hear me now. We're gonna call again, I guess. But yeah, I ran a 6-cell on mine, and it just overpowered it way too much. There wasn't enough. There's too much power for most of the engines that I started, so it would either spin it over too fast, it would get crazy. Can you hear me now, Lee?
Yes, I can.
All right, I got Lee on my phone now. But yeah, so I guess I found the 4-cell to be the most practical for most all my engines that I started. Turns them all over fine. Pete had with Horizon, he had a couple different starters, and they all had their own nicknames, and they had the Intimidator, and then the big one with the 6 cells they called the Enforcer, and it would start most anything. I'm actually looking at getting a new starter this year. Those of you that heard my old one, it definitely had some bearings going out in it.
Oh man.
So I'll get a new one this year, get a nice pretty one. Maybe I'll get her chrome plated so that I can be cool like some of the guys that feel they need to show off all their stuff.
There you go. Oh, and if you see me and Chad at an event or whatever, all we ask you to do is bring a beer bottle, basically a full one for us or an empty one, and we got a great game we'll show you.
Man, we had a blast with that, didn't we?
Oh, man. So if you think about it and you see us up there, ask us about it. We'll show you.
I tell you what, even when we can't fly, Lee and I figure out a way to have fun.
Exactly.
That's what it's about.
I don't want to say we're easily amused, but we are.
Yep. So yeah, that's my safety tip. Be careful of the props. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add something. You got like the electric props and the APC nylon props, stuff like that. Those things are crazy sharp on the backside. I actually like to take a little bit of sandpaper and just go over it quick to soften that edge. It'll save some heartache in the long run. Trust me.
Exactly, especially on a little glow engine. If you ever hydrolocked an engine and you go to turn it over by hand, the APC prop on it, I sliced my finger pretty good doing that before. So,
yeah, I guess I'm going to throw a couple more safety things out there. If you're running a gas engine, for sure, make sure you have some sort of an engine kill. I don't, they have the throttle cuts and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that's good enough. I've seen all too many times where the throttle servo fails, quits working for whatever reason, whether it's the arm falls off or whatever, and you no longer have a way to kill your engine at that point. But if you have like a fiber optic kill switch or a mechanical one for like the Zenoas, where you basically are using like a limit switch type of thing to open it up with a separate servo outside of the throttle servo, it'll prevent you some heartache if you ever lose your throttle servo.
Oh yeah, or being that guy at a fly-in or something like that that's flying for 45 minutes because his triplane's flying around at 3/8 throttle.
Yeah, well, I mean, a perfect example is Dennis Crooks was it Indiana Warbird campaign this year or last year?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, last year he lost his throttle servo. I don't know exactly what happened, whether it was the linkage came off or the arm came, whatever it was, but he lost his throttle, and it slowly throttled back for him, which he was lucky because it started slowing down enough to where he could get it on the ground, and then he slowly added down elevator to get a prop strike so that it would kill the engine. But he had no way to turn his engine off, so he was stuck. And this was during the noontime show.
Yeah.
Yep. And luckily Dennis Crooks is a great pilot and can work great under stress, and he got it down safely. But, I mean, if you're stuck wide open for whatever reason, it may not be a safe scenario anymore.
Correct. Correct.
So that's a safety thing.
Especially if you put way too big of a fuel tank in.
Like I do.
There you go. Well, you got a possibility of running out of battery. There's that potential.
Yep. Well, and that's why I always go way overkill on my batteries too. I'm buying new batteries. I'm going to buy some Max Amp Lipos for my Newport this year, and I'll have about 1,100 milliamps in it for battery power between the two batteries, because I run redundant batteries. But yeah, so that's it's one of those things. I have crap loads of milliamps. I run enough fuel in my Newport that I flew it for an hour and 15 minutes, was it, or something like that?
Almost an hour.
Yeah. And I still landed with quarter tank of fuel.
Yep.
And that wasn't just flying it around at idle. That was having fun playing around, seeing how long I could fly it. So if I lost my throttle right away in the flight, I could be up there for a while. Especially if it's at idle, I'd be up there for a long while.
Oh, man.
So.
Well, like you said, Dennis, he did the right thing. He came in and was able to control it and do a prop strike. So, sometimes you got to sacrifice your aircraft or prop or whatever to maintain the safety for everybody else.
Yep. So I don't know. I put them in all my gas engines. I have an engine kill switch, whether it's run by a servo, whether it's run by an electronic, a optic kill, some kind of a kill switch. But yeah, I put it in every single one.
There you go.
Another reason it works good is when you're working your choke. I use a lot of mechanical chokes. You flip it, you get that pop. You have to shut that choke off. A lot of times you're reaching in by the prop.
Yep.
One quick flip and my engine's dead. It won't start no matters what. That's an advantage there. So even if you had your engine or your throttle cut off so that was on, your ignition's still alive at that point.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So yeah, I guess that's my safety.
There we go.
So yeah, let's while we're on the subject of starting, what's your preferred method of starting, Lee?
Yeah, my connection just went.
Can you not hear me or what?
Yeah, it's going back down.
Are you listening on the phone or on Skype?
On Skype, it went way down. So it's back now. We're good.
Okay. Are you listening to me on Skype or on the phone?
On the phone.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so what's your preferred method of starting, Lee?
Hopefully the right way.
The right way, I tell you.
It kind of depends on the engine itself, whether it's electronic ignition or if it's magneto, whatever. I mean, obviously, in the ignition engine, basically, I wide open throttle, full choke, ignition on until it pops.
Yep.
As soon as it pops, then I will throttle back down to idle or just a tad above idle, choke off, and continue flipping until it runs. Basically, you gotta get that fuel to that carburetor, and that's where you get that pop. As soon as you get that pop, you're good to go. Mag engine, whether you have a mechanical spring starter in it, like Bennett has for the Zenoas and whatnot, those you can pretty much do whatever you need to do with it. But I usually will still, I'll manually prime it if I can get my finger on the carburetor to choke it, because a lot of Zenoas don't have a choke lever butterfly in it. But usually you want to get it pretty wet so that you have fuel right there and whatnot. So, but you just flip through or use a starter. I usually use a Sullivan Megatron on most of my stuff anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to, if I can, I prefer to just flip it, just because you're not having to carry the starter around, all that kind of stuff. If you have a decorative spinner or something of that sort, you're not ruining your spinner, the paint on it.
Yep.
But, like my Sato engines, I use a starter on all those because the chokes are kind of goofy on the Sato. So it's not easily done unless it's a sport plane where you can drill a hole in the side to stick a rod in it, basically. So those I'll use the starter on. But that's why I like to use electronic ignition engines, because they're easier started by hand. You can hand prop a Zenoa. I do it all the time. They are a lot harder, just because you have to get the prop where the magnet and the pickup are, you have to get that moving at such a speed that it generates enough of a spark to ignite. So you have to actually flip it through all that, which can be difficult, and I think a little bit more dangerous than just bucking up and using a starter on it, But,
exactly.
But I've never had an electronic ignition engine that I couldn't hand prop if I wanted to.
Yeah. One thing that goes back to your safety tip that I see occasionally, actually two things on starting engines that kind of scare me. Sometimes the guys will have an electronic ignition and either they won't flip it till it pops and then take the choke off and whatnot, but they'll just sit there and just constantly flip it until they get it to run. And you can tell after about the fourth or fifth flip, they start getting a little more impatient, and they're reaching into the prop to get that thing going as fast as they can because they want to get up in the air quick.
Yep.
And they get going so fast that every once in a while that thing will fire up, and they're reaching back in there for another handful of prop to spin it, and their prop's gonna get a handful. So, and the other thing I've seen too is like the Bennett starter, the spring starters. They got the one-way bearing with the spring on it. I see guys turn that thing, almost 2 turns back in there. I've always been told by Bennett and stuff that you only go a half a turn on those. You're not really going to gain any more by overturning that spring. If anything, you're going to damage that spring. But
Yeah,
I
and
have
I've
seen
seen-
guys. Go ahead.
I've seen a lot of people break their springs doing that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even with me only going my half spring or half revolution, I would have the spring go out about every year and a half on my Stuka.
Yeah.
But I have seen guys where they'll have that spring and they'll take it all the way through, and they'll grab the prop tip by their index finger and their thumb and hold it by the prop tip and let go of it. And I tell you what, that scares the heck out of me when I see that. So.
Well, I don't care for the spring starters at all to begin with, and I'll tell you why. Your engine is hot when you're turning it back, and you're going over the compression stroke. So theoretically, it could spark and it could grab on you, and you're holding the prop. That's dangerous right there. You wouldn't do that on a full scale. You don't ever grab a prop and flip it through a compression stroke on a full scale airplane with the mags hot. You just don't do it.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely.
it'll get you. I mean, I can't. I'm not gonna lie. I've done it before, and I've had them kick on me. I know people who have had their hands in a prop. I got 4 slashes on my thigh from an engine. And that goes to another safety tip: throttle holds. I use a lot of throttle holds where I have to flip a switch to get my throttle to start working. Otherwise, it will only be at idle. And that's simply for if I ever have to do anything or move anything, I'll hit that flip or that switch. Because I had one where I reached over and I accidentally bumped the throttle and the plane came into my leg, and my thigh is what killed the engine when the prop hit my thigh. And that was on an old glow engine, 4-stroke glow engine. And it got 4 cuts on me before it finally stopped, and it hurt.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So there's been a lot of people that have been there. So that throttle hold just prevents it. So if I accidentally hit the throttle for whatever reason, the throttle doesn't actually go up because it's impossible until that switch is flipped.
Exactly.
So,
That's a good tip.
so yeah, I mean, I use them. It's real common in electrics, but yeah, I use it in my gas stuff now just because I had that happen once. It only takes one time for you to realize that it sucks.
Oh, for sure. I know when I first started learning how to fly, my trainer is the one I got my hand in a prop. Just reaching through to grab the blow driver is what happened on mine, and it took my fingernail off on my thumb.
Yeah. So.
So.
All right.
All
Got
right,
anything
moving
more on
to-
starting?
I think that's about all I got.
Yeah. That's about all I got too.
Okay.
So
We'll move on to maintenance now.
yeah, let's move on
All
to
right.
maintenance now.
All right.
It's a shame we don't have
unless
it.
something falls off. There
It's
you
a
go.
shame we don't have. That's your maintenance routine sometimes, I
okay.
think. And even
Yeah,
when
I
it
know
starts
my
to fall
column
off,
goes-
don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, maintenance. On a gas engine, there's very little maintenance you have to do,
That is very true.
especially on a
if-
two-stroke.
Yeah. About the biggest maintenance that I can tell you to do, especially if you have a wood prop, is every so often go through and double check your prop bolts just to make sure that they are tight, because wood will compress.
I believe a lot of the manufacturers recommend that before every flight you check your prop bolts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't necessarily do that, but it's not a bad habit to get into because, I mean, it's wood. It's going to compress. And as soon as that prop loosens up, you got issues, man.
Oh, you ain't a kidding. You ain't a kidding.
So it was different when there was just the one solid nut that went on because your prop would just spin. But now when it loosens up, if you have like the 4-bolt hub or a 6-bolt hub, it'll shear every single one of those off and that prop goes flying.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I've seen it happen. Well, look at it was St. Charles. Was it this year or last year with that Taub? Where the prop come off and hit, was it Gene Stutzman?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was it. That was that Windy City, yeah.
And that was during the noontime show, wasn't it?
Yes, it
He
was.
was firing up for the noontime show. His prop flew off and hit him.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, little four stroke was 90 in it, I think.
Yeah, it was in a Taub, so it was probably around a 90. Yeah.
And yeah, he went to fire up. He was using an electric starter, and it backfired. And it just threw it, and it stuck him, in his arm and whatnot. So.
I mean, luckily it was very minor, and he was fine.
Yeah.
Nothing major, but I mean, it could have been a lot worse, man. It really could have.
Yeah, you never know where that prop's going to go if it comes off. You obviously know it's going to go forward usually, and it can go left or right, but usually it's not going to come back behind there.
Well, and it's one thing if it hits you. It's a completely another thing if you're at an event and it hits a spectator.
Oh yeah.
That sucks.
You know it.
So yeah, that's
about the only other thing I can think of for maintenance on it too. Every so often you might even want to go through and check your muffler bolts, just to make sure that they are tight. Because once if you lose your muffler, a lot of times you'll actually go lean on the low end, and your idle will not be there. You'll be flying a really high idle and coming in, once you lose that back pressure.
I can tell you a story about that. The Smoothie XL, we had that pretty prop that we painted up.
Yep.
That's how I broke the prop.
Oh yeah.
The muffler loosened up. The idle was high. I was using a new kill switch, which I decided I was never going to use that setting. It was one of the electrodynamic kill switches where you can have it set up with a 5-second delay so that you can't accidentally flip it off in the air. Well, when I went to flip it, I was so used to it killing the ignition right away. And then this was set up different, which you can have them set up both ways. I just don't have it set up with the delay anymore. But it didn't kill it. So I got nervous and I flipped it again, and it didn't kill it. And I ended up taxiing it into my toolbox, Worst part is there was 3 guys standing there, and it was a high idle, but it was slowly moving. Each one of us could have very easily stepped over and grabbed it and stopped it. But we watched it taxi right into my toolbox and broke a prop that was painted with automotive paint and blah, blah, blah. And the worst part was, in order to get another prop like that, we had to buy 2 more cans of automotive paint because we were out. So it cost $100 to repaint that prop.
There you go.
So yeah. That's... that was because the muffler loosened up and it had the high idle.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, you're supposed to tighten your muffler bolts when the engine's warm.
Yes. Yes.
Reason being is because of the way the metals expand and contract.
Yep.
You know,
Definitely.
if you tighten it when it's cold, you have a higher chance of your muffler loosening up on you versus if you tighten it when it's warm.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. Darn
So,
sure.
yep. So what I always recommend is, especially on a new engine, run it, let it warm up, do your tuning that you have to do, blah blah blah. Let it get up to temperature, shut it down, and then tighten those muffler bolts again right there.
Yep.
So.
Definitely.
And normally the first time you run it, you're running it without the cowl on and all that stuff, so you can get at the needles to do a little bit of tuning if you have to. So normally it's wide open and you have good access to it at that point.
Usually,
Another thing,
yes.
another thing I like to do as soon as that's done is I'll take and let it cool down then, and I'll take some high temp RTV and I'll just squirt it on the heads. And it doesn't necessarily hold the muffler bolts in, but if they loosen up, it prevents you from losing a muffler bolt, which sucks when you have no muffler bolt and your muffler came off, you know,
Oh yeah.
and you're out at the field.
Yep.
So,
And especially with some of these mufflers, you know, that are, you know, 150, 200, 300 bucks, you know, you don't want to lose your muffler in flight
Yeah.
too.
another thing I want to touch on that I wish I would have remembered when we were talking about the bolting on the prop. Another thing you never want to do, don't put Loctite on your prop bolts.
No.
Do you know why?
On the prop bolts?
Yeah.
Okay, you got me.
All right.
Sweet.
The reason being, and this is honest to God, you can talk to Loctite if you want to. Most Loctite or thread locker isn't a high enough temp. And what happens is it'll actually soften once your engine warms up. And Loctite, when it's in its liquid form, acts as a lubricant. So now it's just like you put oil on your bolts and make them easier to come out when your engine gets up to temperature. So yeah, you'll see like Desert Aircraft tells you never to put Loctite on them. That's why you're supposed to check your prop nuts after every flight or before every flight. And you never want to put Loctite on them because it will act as a lubricant. That's the same thing with a muffler. Loctite is pointless on a muffler. That's why they give you the crazy washers that try and do it, whether it's a lock washer, like a split washer or a star or what are those? I can't think of what they're called. It's like two washers with little teeth on them.
Oh, the grip ones, the tooth ones. Yeah, I know exactly.
Man,
what
I
you're
can't
talking
remember
about.
what they're called now. Starts with an F, I want to say.
Yeah, either that or even getting the bolts that have the safety wire holes in it,
Yep.
and safety wire in them even.
Yeah,
So,
and most bolts you can drill easy enough through them to be able to do your own safety wire if you wanted to.
yep.
So,
Yep.
so yeah. Another thing I want to touch on maintenance is, once a year, I guess at least once a year I replace my spark plug. I don't care what it looks like. Nothing sucks more than you having engine problems because your spark plug is fouled out. So every year I try to replace my spark plugs. The other thing is every year, once the season's done, I go through and there's a screen in the bottom of your carburetor.
Yes.
For Walbro carburetors anyways, I can't guarantee the other ones. But take that out and clean that out, put that back in. It's there to catch the big chunks of stuff. So
Yeah.
make sure you clean it. I clean mine out once a year normally.
Yeah, I know when I first got into the giant scale, everybody around here, they were always a big fan, that, oh my God, you want to get rid of that screen because you don't want that thing plugging up on you and not being able to fire. Well, it's going to save you because it's not going to get much crap in the needle valve. That's basically what it's protecting for the most part. And your passages through the carburetor also.
Yeah, and I'd rather have that screen plug up than the valves in my carburetor because it's way easier to clean that screen.
Oh, you ain't kidding. You ain't kidding.
Yeah, so...
And actually, a Walbro carburetor is a very simple but effective device, so
Mhm.
it's not very hard to take apart and rebuild it and
Yep.
everything too.
Yeah, and I mean, outside of that, I guess which would kind of be maintenance is every few years I replace my fuel lines. They're cheap enough, and there's another thing that it's super easy to get it where it gets hard, and then you start getting an air leak, and it can give you all sorts of problems, So it's not really engine maintenance, but it's still your engine fuel maintenance. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, I agree. Yeah, the fuel line may seem like it's expensive, but it's really not.
Yeah.
When you come down to it.
So, and I mean every when I pull my cowls and stuff like that off to clean out the screen and stuff, I'll just take a little bit of cleaner and clean up my engine a bit if it's got some dirty spots on it. The more dirt and stuff that you get on your engine, all that acts as an insulator, so it's going to allow your engine to heat up more. So the cleaner you can keep your engine, the better the heat's going to dissipate off of it, which is going to make it run longer. And it's also way easier to work on a clean engine than it is a dirty engine.
Yeah, I fully agree there.
Outside of that, there's really not much maintenance. Now we get into the 4-strokes, and there's a little bit more maintenance. When like my Satos, after the first couple hours of running, I'll check the tappets to make sure that my clearances is right and adjust as necessary. Normally after the first couple hours you have to adjust a little bit, and then I don't know, every 5 hours or so I'll just check them again. They're normally good after that, but I just check them to check them. And when I do that, I just take a couple of drops of my Redline oil that I run through, mix in my exhaust, and I'll put a couple of drops on the rocker arms just to make sure that they're properly lubed. Why not put a little bit of lube on there? I mean, I know that the engine's supposed to lubricate them and all that, but you're in there, you have it opened up. Why not put a couple of drops on there? If it doesn't need it, it's not going to hurt it.
Yeah, it's not like it's not going to make the engine run.
Yeah, and I do the same thing with the Moki. Is every once in a while I'll put a couple of drops on. If my Moki's just hanging out, we had a Stearman and the Moki was just hanging out there wide and open. Before every flight, we just put a drop on each rocker. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't hurt any.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, I guess for maintenance, that's all I got on that. I mean, outside of if something breaks, but I mean that's no longer maintenance. That's repair.
Yeah, that's true.
If you get a bolt that's starting to get worn from use, replace it. I like to replace my prop bolts every few years, just because if you're changing it a lot and there's a lot of stress on them, it doesn't hurt for a buck or two to have that insurance, cheap insurance,
Yeah. One thing I'd add on, I guess you can call it maintenance. I know we kind of talked about having to rebuild an engine and stuff like that, brand new out of the box, for a real cheap one. One thing I've run across on some of the DLE engines, the spark plugs that come with them are not the highest quality spark plugs in the world. I have seen issues with the spark plugs where 1 minute it runs great and next minute you can't get the thing to fire, or it'll fire intermittently and whatnot. Spark plugs, what, $6-7 maybe for a CM6?
Yeah, you can get them like $450, the NGKs.
Yeah,
at some places. So
yeah, I mean, even $6-7, it's still cheap. Just take that DLE and throw it as far away as you can, or give it to one of your enemies that you want to shoot down later on, or something like that.
Well,
let them use it.
What I use it for is when I'm building the plane, and I'm putting the engine in and out, I'll have that DLE plug in it, and I'll save it so that I can use it with the other ones. Because if I accidentally hit it, I don't care, because it's not a plug I'm going to be using, but it plugs that hole.
Yeah, definitely. You want to keep that cleaned up, or plugged anyway, so you don't want to get in there. Yeah. Another thing with the DLEs that I've also noticed too is some of the hardware bolts that come with it for the mounting. I've seen them back out quite a bit. I don't know if it's something in there in the threads on them particular bolts or whatever into the standoffs and whatnot. So I've just me personally, I've gone through and just thrown them away and just bought good bolts I know are going to be good.
Yeah, what I've learned to do is I just drill out the standoff, and I'll run a bolt all the way through and double nut it on the back, or a blind nut with a jam nut. You know, I've had it happen too often. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than losing 2 or 3 bolts on your standoff and your engine's dangling in the firewall, and you got to tear it down at a bend or something like that to replace a couple bolts that could have been done with in the beginning.
I'll tell you another thing I like to do when I'm using those standoffs, because the standoffs, they give you like the footprint of roughly a half inch, 7/16 a half inch is all the footprint each standoff gives you. And the problem is 9 times out of 10, you're mounting that to plywood, which is wood, so it can compress. And when you get the vibration of the engine, it actually compresses, and that's what's loosening up your bolts mainly. What I like to do, a lot of times you need weight on the nose anyways. I'll take a piece of sheet metal, like I don't know, like maybe 16th or 47 thousandths, whatever, and I'll cut it to the size of those and a little bigger, and that way it spreads out the load on the firewall, so it's not just on those 4 little points. Now granted, those points will have a lot of load, but it'll spread that out over a longer area so that it doesn't compress the wood as bad and as easily.
Yeah, definitely. Either that or even putting in fender washers in behind them.
Yep, exactly. Just something because I mean, really, that's putting a lot of force on just a small area.
Yes.
So.
Definitely.
All
right, that's all I got for maintenance. I'm out.
Yeah, I think that's all I have for regular maintenance. I mean, they're pretty basic.
Yeah,
so,
they're pretty forgiving for the most part.
Yeah. So yeah. Can you hear the kid playing basketball outside my workshop here?
No. You put him up a basketball hoop now?
He had one, but I don't know. Anyways, we'll move on.
Understood.
So let's go into storage. And this is one of them things, I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
I think we're both on the same page as far as this goes.
I'm not going to lie. I do pretty much absolutely nothing when I store an engine. I'll tape up the ports so that dust don't get in it. But that's about it. I'll make sure it has a little bit of oil. I'll take, like I keep saying, my red line oil that I mix. But, I mean, if that's what you're mixing with your gas, it obviously works. So that's why I constantly use it. But I'll squirt a little bit down in the spark plug hole and spin it around a bit, let it work its way through. Maybe put a couple of drops straight down in the air intake so that it goes through good, or pull the carburetor off and put some in there just so that it has oil in there, and that's it. I mean, I'm not going to lie, most of the time I don't even go through that much trouble. I'll put it down the exhaust port.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same. But the only thing I've had where I've done any major for storing an engine for a long time, I had one of the Jack Stafford Zeros, which was actually a foam airplane that was sheeted and fiberglass and whatnot. Flying it one year, I had it for like 2 or 3 years, and it sat for a year. And I took it back out, went to fly it. Well, the wing hold down plate pulled through the foam, so I lost my wing in flight. And it just so happened that the fuselage landed kind of in a mucky, swampy area, if you will. And basically we pulled the fuselage and engine and everything out of this thing. I mean, it was down to probably about 1.5 feet of water. So there was water pouring out of the engine when I got it. I basically brought it home, pulled the spark plug out of it, turned it over a couple times just to get all the water out of it, and I literally dumped motor oil. I mean, just regular 10W30 motor oil in it, in the exhaust port, the carb area, and turned it over a few times, and it sat there for probably 3 years. And then I turned around and put it in my Wildcat. First fired it up, it smoked like crazy for about 10 minutes, but then it ran fine. There was no issues with it whatsoever. So you just want to get that oil in there and get rid of that moisture that was in there.
Yeah. So
that's the biggest thing. So, but
yeah,
as far as storage, I mean, there are products that you can get. I know Stable makes a few things that you can put in to stabilize your gasoline for a long storage periods and whatnot. You can use that. It helps keep the gas from going bad, supposedly. They also have I think it was a fogger or something like that. You can oil.
Yeah,
oil
it's something that you
running.
spray in while it's running. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
do
a lot
any
of
of
work.
that. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure
that's
there's
work.
going to be an engine guy out there that has some scientific reason why you want to do this and that and this and that. And by all means, listen to them then, because they're obviously way more knowledgeable than Lee and I, who have no engine design or anything like that experience.
Yeah.
But I can tell you what I've used and it's worked, and you're more than welcome to do it. But like I said, I can't guarantee that that's the best and most proper way to do it. So,
Yeah. The biggest thing is if it makes you feel warm and fuzzy, by all means do it. you
Yeah.
know?
well, and a lot of times if I'm using an engine that's sat for a long time, I'll rebuild it, rebuild the carb, put in new fresh gaskets and stuff like that anyways, and clean everything out, before I put it in, just so I don't have any issues with it. Because your gas will varnish over time and thicken up and clog up the carburetor and stuff like that. But,
Definitely.
yeah. So, that's...
This ain't so much as far as putting it into storage as it is pulling it out of storage, or even like a brand new engine. A lot of times what I'll do, if I've had one that's been sitting for a long time, I'll actually physically take the carburetor off, and I'll usually have an old coffee cup or some kind of container that I can put the carburetor in, and I'll put it in there and fill it so that there's gasoline in that carburetor above it, and I'll let it sit for a week.
Yeah.
Before I go to fire it up. Basically, when you get a brand new engine, all them diaphragms and stuff, they're dry. There's no moisture in there to let them move around like they should once they do get wet with the gasoline and whatnot. So that's just something I do. It seems like it helps get the engine running a lot faster than flipping it 4,000 times to get the gas up there to go.
Yeah, so, but that's what we do. We've had good luck with it, but I just got to throw out that CYA thing. We by no means are an expert in maintaining engines, but we haven't had an issue doing this. So there's probably a better way out there. But that's what I do. You can use after run oil, stuff like that. But I mean, just the same as with a car. Stored over a long period of time, I don't think there's anything you can do 100% outside of letting it soak in oil the whole time to keep it from going bad. I do like to seal mine in a bag. You can buy the it's made for packing your clothes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And you use your vacuum to vacuum seal it. I do that, so that way whatever moisture's in there is all that's in there, and it does cause a little vacuum on it. Don't know if it helps at all, but I will do that if I know I'm storing it for a really long time. But I mean, normally when I pull an engine off a plane, it's because that plane has crashed or done something of that sort. And 9 times out of 10, anytime a plane crashes, I will take it apart and just make sure nothing's bent before I do anything.
Yeah. And you gotta take it with a grain of salt, because this is the guy that displays his engines on a pile of sand too.
Ah, yeah. It wasn't sand. Yep. And I am a firm believer in throwing some, before you start any engine, if it's sat for a while, even the beginning of the year, spray a little oil in there and flip it over by hand a few times just to make sure everything's loosened up properly.
Yeah,
definitely. Get some oil in all the bearings, stuff like that. So
I agree.
All right. Anything else on storing?
No, store and go.
All right, let's take another break so I can flip on my heater and re-warm up my workshop again.
All right, sounds good, bud.
All right, see you in a bit, guys.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Chad here from the ChadLee Show. Just want to make sure you're subscribing to all of our social media sites. We're on Facebook at ChadLee's After Hours RC Podcast, www.facebook.com/ChadLee Show, or you can simply search us at ChadLee Show. We're also on Instagram at www.instagram.com/ChadLee After Hours Show. You can also search us ChadLee Show. We're also on Podbean. That's where our podcasts are mainly put at. That is chadleeshow.podbean.com. We're also on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, ChadLee's After Hours RC Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that to catch our latest how-to videos. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the show. All right.
We're back.
We're back. I guess we are back. So, we're all done with the engine stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a little bit shorter podcast than it has been. I don't know. I guess we still got almost 2 hours of recording in already.
There you go.
And
yeah, we still got good questions to go through yet.
Yeah,
too.
we got quite a few questions. I took a screenshot. Oh.
Maybe another?
Oh, you'll never guess who just sent me a message. Did you hear that,
yeah.
Bing?
Yeah, I did.
That was Jeremy Chrisman.
No way.
He says, damn, this retirement weekend kept me too busy today. I didn't get a chance to breathe. Had a retired dinner tonight. Just got home. Do we want to call him?
Can.
Let's give him a call.
All right.
I got his phone number.
Oh, boy.
Jeremy. J-E-R. Uh-oh. What the heck? Where is he?
Germany.
If I can find him.
Okay.
Just talk for a bit, Lee. Just ramble about something.
Jeremy.
Oh, here we go.
E-M-Y.
From Lenstall. Let's call him.
All right.
I wonder if this is an expensive phone call.
For him or us? Or you?
For me.
I'll
don't
try.
hear
I'm good
nothing.
with it.
Oh, there it goes.
There it is.
Hello?
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 Yep. Hello?
Is this Jeremy?
Hello?
Yes.
Jeremy, it's Chad.
And Lee.
What's up, buddy? You called a German number. Do you realize that?
How expensive do you think it is?
Not expensive. Let me call you right back.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I guess he
Wait,
says.
wait, no.
Oh, we gotta edit
load.
that. Edit.
Shoot load.
You called the Germany number, he said.
Yeah.
Do you know how expensive that is? No, how expensive?
A crap load.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Jeremy's from Germany. Well, he's from America, but he lives in Germany.
Missouri. Yeah.
So apparently it costs a lot of money to call Germany.
Didn't cost me a dime.
Becky's going to see it on the phone bill and freak out.
Hey, at least it's not 1-900 number this time.
That's true. Oh, here we go.
Oh.
Maybe. Hello?
Hey, Chad.
Hey,
Hey.
you're on the ChadLee show.
Yeah,
Live.
I've always dreamed of being on the ChadLee show.
Well, that's what I figured.
Hey,
I hope
just
that
no
phone
company.
call you just made to Germany doesn't cost you too much, but probably about $5.
It was worth it, maybe.
That's right.
So yeah, I've got another number I'll give you offline where you can call me and it's American cost. How goes the podcast tonight?
Not too bad. We're up to the question portion. Do you have any?
I do. So you have the Sato.
Well,
84cc motor, right?
Hold up a second.
Yeah.
We now want to introduce the Freedom of Information Act segment
Act.
with
Yeah.
Jeremy Chrisman.
There you go.
All right, go ahead.
Hey, so I got a question for you about a Sato motor.
Yep.
I know you have one in your 1/3 scale, 84cc, was it FG84, something like that, right?
Yep.
So I picked up one secondhand, mounted
Oh,
on
boy.
an airplane. Well, my dad actually purchased it, but I'm going to be the one preparing it for flight. And it's fairly new. A couple gallons to it is all that's been ran through it. But I've been reading where a lot of folks say it needs some Ray English mod.
I'll tell you right now, we already talked about this on the podcast. Don't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every one that I have is bone stock. I don't even have a exhaust ring for it. I just use the flex tube that comes with it.
Yeah.
It's good enough.
So this one's got the exhaust ring already mounted on it, so it's
Yeah.
going to stay. But
Yeah, but yeah, the Ray English stuff. Basically, what it comes down to is it's got the big round intake plenum on the back of the motor, and the intake tubes only go into it about 1/4 of an inch. Ray English brings those in closer towards the center. And then I think he changes something with some bearings or something. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. Every single Sato engine that I've seen seize up or have an issue had the Ray English mods done to it.
oh snap! Okay, well,
and I can tell you,
we'll
I
leave
got a
It runs good now, so I just wanted to know if it was a good preventative thing or just leave it.
I got a crap load of hours on both of mine, and I haven't had an issue.
Okay.
And mine are bone stock. I run 15-to-1 red line through it. Make sure you run the proper oil and oil mixture through it. That's the other thing. And then
Do you recommend red line?
yeah.
Okay.
And you'll find out when you listen to the podcast, the beginning part of the podcast, I talk about why I use Redline and what I switched from and other stuff that we used. And both Lee and I now have both switched over to Redline because of the results that we've gotten personally from it.
Okay, so I know over here in Germany, I may have to hunt for that, or I may have to do some mail order. But I know a lot of the guys over here in the club are using steel, made by the Steel brand, like makes chainsaws, weed eaters. It's called
the
Ultras,
ashless stuff.
Ultras. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I'll look for this red line, and if I have to smuggle some in my my bag back from Christmas time from the States, I might just do that.
Yeah, I believe Sato actually requires it for their warranty.
Oh, snap! Okay. Now, are you talking about for Sato 4-strokes, or are you talking about for 2-strokes also?
I use it in my 2-strokes also.
Okay.
Yep.
Would there be another brand that would be acceptable for 2-strokes, or would you just stick with this red line all the way across the board? I mean,
I would stick with Redline all the way across the board. I'll go over briefly. I had used Klotz and Amsoil beforehand, and I talked with DA and with Horizon, and mainly Horizon because I started running the Evolutions and Satos a lot, and they recommend. Oh shoot! I got to turn off my heater.
Uh-oh. It kicked on and out. It's gonna be noisy, right?
Hold on a sec. Let me turn off my heater quick.
No problems. Hopefully
Hey,
I'm
Jeremy,
making
can you hear
sense
me?
tonight. I've had a decent amount of red wine tonight. Had a little retirement party, and I'm horizontal in my bed in Germany, and it's coming up on midnight. So
That's
hopefully I'm
way
making
too much
sense.
information, Jeremy.
Lee, are you there?
Yes, I am.
You can't hear Lee. Lee keeps talking, but
I know.
Lee, I have him on my phone, so I hear you through my headphones, but he doesn't hear you at all.
I know. I was yelling.
Oh no! Oh well.
This is gonna be an interesting
Can I buy a
podcast,
second
Jeremy.
question?
Yeah. Did you
And
want me
if you
to
already
finish my
covered it-
thing on the oil, or don't you care?
Oh, absolutely. If you've already said it earlier in the podcast, don't bother repeating yourself.
Oh.
I'll definitely listen, and I don't have to have the information right now. But if you're repeating yourself, skip it.
All right. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself. So.
All right, I'll listen to the podcast. I'll get the info, and then have you talked about breaking engines in?
Yes.
Is it better do on a stand or in the airframe?
We've talked about it, but
Airframe.
we do ours in the airframe, and we give reasons why. Mainly because of the airflow over the engine is better when it's in the airframe, flying through the air versus sitting on a bench, just radiating heat.
Excellent. That makes sense.
You know, it's like a car. If you run a car on a dyno, they have to put that huge fan in front of it so
Yeah,
that it gets
I've
the
seen
proper airflow. And I know the airplane engines have the props but it doesn't push enough airflow through. Most of the air that flies off the prop is going to be coming off closer towards the
tip.
tips.
Okay. Wow. So how far are you into the podcast tonight? How many hours?
Right now we're a couple hours in. So
Yeah,
we
good
got
champion.
about another hour left with all the questions that we got, and we'll go from there. It'll probably be around
Love
a
it.
2.5, 3 hour show probably again.
And do you have you talked about richening things up for break-in?
Yes, and I
And
talk about I basically tune it to max RPM and then richen it to lose about 600 RPM, and I found that's a pretty good spot to still be able to fly the plane.
excellent. I can't wait to listen to it. I'm sorry I wasn't able to email you questions. Just I've been in a busy beaver.
Oh, that's all right. It
Oh,
keeps
that's
it down to a manageable time frame,
Yeah.
without 4,000
Without all
questions.
my stuff.
So,
Bad thing is he's retired
Well,
now.
next time I'm going to, now that I'm retired, I'm going to send you just a slew of questions. I'll have to probably FedEx a paper roll, like an old scribe roll that you can roll out and answer them all, because I'm going to ask you questions that's not even aircraft related. Just because last podcast you said you were willing to take them. So
yeah. Well, what's funny about that, and I'll have to try. I got the video on YouTube, but when I married my wife, I made this huge long scroll that was probably 100 foot long, and I had my son go down the aisle with it as I read it, the whole thing through.
oh my God.
It was.
that's
I had the whole place was laughing their butts off, and
Yeah,
Becky,
of course they would.
Good job.
That's hilarious.
Becky was smacking me. so yeah.
All right, fellas, I'll let you get to it. I better get some sleep. Oh, you remember Steve Weaver, who's building the smoothie over here?
Yep.
He was at the retirement party tonight, and his car broke down. So we're going to make an early morning rescue. So
What-
it's
what
midnight.
kinda-
I got to get some shut-eye, and we're going to go rescue a car in the morning.
What kind of car is it?
He's got a 2004 Chevy Colorado, I believe it is.
Oh.
But he puts his key in, he can't turn the tumble over, so either the clutch lock is not disengaging or his key is so worn. He's got a key that's pretty worn.
All right.
His key might be so worn. So we're going to go car rescue, and you guys get back to the podcast, and I can't wait to listen to it.
All right. Good luck.
All right, man.
Thanks for calling.
See ya.
Sorry about your phone bill there. I'll give you another number you can call next time.
All right. Fantastic.
All right. Bye, Chad. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Well, that was
the
great.
infamous Jeremy Chrisman.
Yep. The best part was he couldn't hear you at all.
I know. I yelled
gotta-
a couple times.
And he's got Skype too. We probably could have gotten him on Skype, but I got to get that thing so that I can plug my phone in and we can hear the
Yeah.
talk to him, stuff like that. I can run it through my mixer. I got to get a regular mixer instead of this digital one. I'm using the digital mixer right now. So
Well, hey,
yeah.
we're only our fourth podcast in, so
Yeah,
we're getting
and I have no job, so
yeah.
maybe when I get a job, I can afford to start buying things to make the show a little nicer. Until then, y'all got to deal with it.
There you go. Sorry for your luck.
Yeah. So just don't tell my wife that I called Germany.
Oops.
All right. So now I guess we could say this is an international show.
Yes, it is.
We've had our first person from out of the country on the show.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
The ratings are going up now, man.
Hey, the smoke's coming out of my computer already. Maybe
No,
because it's like
that's
400
your,
years
furnace
old.
behind you.
All right, so let's get back to
Our Freedom of Information Act.
yeah. All right. Let me try and find the very first question. Was it this
Was
one?
that Roger or was it Steve Merrill?
It was actually Alex Wolesny.
Oh, I must have seen that one.
Well, a lot of these were on ones that I shared. They didn't comment on the actual ChadLee post, which we highly recommend you go to our Facebook page and contact us, as we're guaranteed to see it there.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
all right.
Chad, are you finished putting some trim up or something like that? I keep hearing you hammering something.
No, that's my boy playing basketball. Hitting the garage door.
Huh?
Yeah. You guys just got to deal with it. He's my basketball star. That's my retirement plan right there.
Man, you're in trouble, buddy.
No, dude, get this. He is he's in 8th grade right now. He's 13 years old, turning 14. He's already got college scouts contacting us.
I see the post about that stuff. So.
I mean, the kid is crazy good at basketball. I'll give him that.
Oh yeah.
Got an ego
yeah.
like you wouldn't believe, but he's good at basketball.
Well, he's 12 foot tall too.
Yeah, I mean he's on a traveling team. Actually, this summer, one of his tournaments is in Las Vegas. Another one's in Atlanta, so it costs a fortune.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, you know they're only kids once, so let them live it out. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. But he definitely has potential to make it big. You know, I grew up, and I don't know if any of our listeners pay attention to basketball. I grew up with Travis Diener, who ended up playing for the 76ers and then went overseas and played some more. But I mean, he's at the same level that Travis Diener was, you know, when he was in high school and stuff. So I could see him making it if he doesn't get in trouble and continues practicing, you know, trying hard.
Good deal.
So long as he doesn't knock somebody up, you know, because that'll get you.
Oh yeah, it will.
Ask me how I know.
Oops.
I was 18. So
Hey, at least you made the 18.
yeah, you know, but she wasn't, which caused even more problems. But
Oh,
we won't get into that.
That's a whole other podcast, buddy.
Yeah, I got lucky on that one because
All
they
right.
passed a law in Wisconsin where you could consent at 17 then, which is what got me through it, you know.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
All right, we're going down the wrong avenue now. So.
Let's get back on track. Freedom of
All right.
Information Act after Jeremy Chrisman.
There you go.
Oh, I forgot. I'll bring it up. No, we'll bring it up right now. John Cease.
Oh yes, this is a good one.
He wanted to ask a question, but he couldn't because he only flies electric airplanes.
No, it's a very valid question, and I've got a very valid answer for him.
What was his question?
Maintenance on as far as his electric motors go.
Oh, yeah. What's your recommendation, Lee? Because I got one too.
Okay, well, basically the first thing you got to do every winter, you know, well, every time you get done flying, you got to pull the batteries out. But you want to disconnect it from the speed control, the motor, and literally pull it all the way out. Now, you know, even though it's electric, it still gets dirty from the dust and whatnot in the air. So you basically want to put it in a 5-gallon bucket and then you take like 4 gallons of gasoline, you pour it in there so that you can clean that motor up really good.
Have you been watching Uncle Rob?
And then you put a gasoline engine in the airplane and go fly.
You know, I'm taking a different approach because I
right.
do see the value of an electric motor.
Oh, I do.
Okay. The value is it starts my Sato engines a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
You can put them on your engine for an onboard starter.
I've got that.
You know, you could also hook it up to a fake camshaft for like a D7. I know somebody who did that.
Man, that would be an awesome idea.
And so there's uses, practical uses for electric motors, just not what John Cease is doing with them.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, John Cease,
Yes,
by the
happy
way.
birthday, John. Sorry, I missed it yesterday.
And there again, we have to make this disclaimer. We have nothing against people that fly electric motors. It's just not our thing.
No.
So, but you know what? We will do an electric motor episode, and I will try to get John Cease and Mark Johnson on board because they fly a lot of big electrics. I mean, John Cease is flying the 50cc electric stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So he
Yeah,
definitely
and
knows
there-
stuff. Shoot,
Yes, he
edit.
does.
Where is that? John Cease edit.
Yep. I am impressed that the list ain't that long, though. Yeah.
Hey, I'm trying hard, man. I really am.
I hear you.
So,
But no, John does do a great job with electrics and stuff like that. So it's just a shame he can only fly like 4 minutes at a time.
yeah.
And no sound.
Okay.
Moving on.
Let's get back to our questions. Alex Woolesney, and I apologize for everybody whose name I screw up because, you know, names are important. Anyways, his question is, and I want to say this off on another tangent. As soon as I put this post up, my phone started blowing up something fierce, man. People were just rifling them in on every single group that I shared it to. Man, so hopefully I didn't miss anybody. That's why it's always best to comment on the ChadLee page's post, not one that I share. So anyways, Alex asks, I have a nice looking OS 30 GT 4-stroke gas engine. My problem is that the plug cap plug cap fly away when the engine starts. What can I do? I push down all the way. So I'm guessing what he's saying is the plug cap keeps loosening off the spark plug. I have a great fix. I'm not even going to let Lee start commenting on this yet. He may have another one after me.
Back in 1942, and I did this.
I bought this plane from Lee Watkins in 1953.
Oh, no, I can't lie to you.
All right, we'll tell that story after I finish answering this because it's a hilarious story. But so Alex, what I do is, and I've had this on other engines. One of them was a DLE 35. You get I forget the screw clamp. You know what I'm talking about, Lee?
Yeah.
For putting hoses on. That's what it's
hose
called,
clamp.
right? Is a screw clamp.
Hose clamp.
Hose clamp. Get a hose clamp, a small one, and put it around there and clamp it onto your spark plug. That's what I did. It worked great.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially if it's been, you pull it off and you distort that cap at all.
Yeah.
It can cause that. It's only a spring clip that's holding it on.
Well, and the thing is too, if it's got that metal cap, that's your ground for your ignition. I mean, that's part of the circuit. You need that. If you don't have that, it's going to try and ground through your pickup. And Lee can't hear me right now, but I don't care. So it'll ground through the pickup, and it'll fry out your pickup if you don't have a good, secure connection there. So that's that one. Let's see if Lee picks back up with us. Lee, you want to just call? edit all this out.
Edit.
Oh, there we go.
Edit.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Holy cows, I got a double sound. Let me turn this back off a speakerphone. All right, now try. Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right, fantastic. I put it on speakerphone for some reason, so my mic started picking it up. All right,
Gotcha.
just a second. All right, and Lee's back with us now. So I'll edit out the last 20 minutes while I tried getting a hold of Lee, and Lee tried getting a hold of me, and you guys will never know that it happened except for the awkward pause and restart thing.
Yeah, whatever.
So I finished up. Did you have any more that you wanted to say about the spark plug thing?
No,
The hose clamp? All right.
Not it.
I think that's the best solution to that. I know there's been a lot of people out there that have had that issue.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right. Let me get back to... Oh, so let's talk about this back in 1962 or whatever it was thing. 46.
Oh,
So,
anyway, we're up at Lansing, Michigan, at fly-in this year, and unbeknownst to them, that me and Chad were there, going to be having fun.
and the announcer was oblivious to anything. He didn't know anything about airplanes.
No, he might have known something about boats. He may have known something about cars. He knew nothing about airplanes, and it was fantastic.
So we'll start off with the Stuka. Lee has a Stuka there, right? And the announcer walks up and says, "Oh, is this a JU-87, right?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Is this a JU-87?" And Lee goes, "Oh, no. This is actually a captured Corsair. It was captured by the Germans, and they made a few modifications, to whatever." And the announcer goes, I crap you not. He says, "Oh, I thought it was the Stuka, but now that you say that, I can see the subtle differences."
It was awesome.
The only thing they have in common is a gull wing.
No.
One has a round engine, the other not.
And inline. One has fixed gear, one has retracts.
I mean, one has rounded tail surfaces, the other not.
Surfaces are attached to the trailing edge of the wing, not underneath the wing.
Man, it was hilarious.
And the sad thing is, so I go fly this thing, and during my flight, he's announcing that, hey, look at Lee's Corsair flying through the air.
Captured
everybody's
Corsair.
coming up looking at us like, what the heck is he talking about?
Oh, man. That's what you get when you get Lee and I together.
That's right.
So then
Chad,
I have... Oh, you're going to tell my...
Yeah.
All right, okay, go ahead.
So Chad, a little bit later, probably the very next flight, I think he headed up there with me too. Goes up there with a tri-pacer, and he goes, "Oh, man, this is a nice airplane. What is it?" And he's talking to me, and I go, "Well, I bought this plane back in 1969."
No, it was actually you said before that, because the year you gave was actually before the year the tri-pacer even came about.
Oh, all right, yeah. Well,
Because it was like 34 or something like that you
yeah,
said.
it could have been. So I tell him, it was 1934, whatever it was, whatever year I told him. And the guy goes, "Oh, really? Okay, that's cool." I go, "Look, I can't really lie to you." I said, "This isn't my airplane. This is Chad's." And I'll let you take it over from there, Chad, because it was awesome.
So he walks up to me, and my back was turned, but I overheard this whole conversation. So he walks up to me and says, "Oh, is this your plane here?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Oh, can you tell me a little about it?" I said, "Yeah, I bought this plane from Lee back in 1935. And he goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh," and he starts writing this stuff down. I mean, I'm only 35 years old, man. Do I look like I was alive in 1935? But which was even before the real one was made.
Yeah.
And finally I said, "No, man, I can't lie to you. I got this from somebody else. I told the whole story. He goes, "Well, what plane is it?" And I said, "Well, this is a modified Super Cub with a nose wheel. Which I guess in a way isn't lying because, I mean, it's a tri-pacer, so it's got a Cub wing.
Yep.
So he wrote down all the information. I go up and fly it, and he starts announcing, now you'll see a very unique plane. It's a modified Super Cub with a nose gear. So,
And we had pilots and everybody coming up to us going, what the heck did you guys do to this poor guy?
we were laughing our butts off. The best part is I won Best Classic with that airplane at that show.
Yeah, you did.
Probably because of all the modifications that were on it.
Yeah, there was a lot.
So yeah, that's the story on that. All right, let's get back to the Freedom of Information Act.
That's kind of stupid fun we have, though.
Yeah. All right. So this guy talks about. Did you see the one with the? I forget what the engine was, and I didn't screenshot enough of it. It's got the gold heads. It's like a.
Sado Golden Knight.
No, let me look up. I'm gonna read the next one, and you can talk about that one while I look up the original post. All right. Robert Jones says he's building a Pica Spitfire 88-inch wingspan, calls for a 35 to 41 gas engine at about 20 pounds, looking at a DLE 55 rear exhaust. Is this too much engine?
And me personally, I'd say you're probably a little bit too much. You can probably get away with a DLE 30, no problem, or 35. The DLE seem to put out more power than what like a Zenoa, almost comparable. Like a DLE 55 is probably going to put out just about as much horsepower as a G62 will, if not a little bit more, to be honest with you. So a DLE 55, I would definitely say it's going to be a little bit more. Now, what you can do with that, you can go up to a bigger three-bladed propeller and tone it back a little bit so that you're not, just spinning a great big disc and whatnot. There again, it all goes back to what kind of flying you want to do with this thing. If you're wanting a Reno racer that you're just going to go full throttle the whole time, and you beefed up the build on it so that it can handle the extra forces and stuff like that, DLE 55 would be no problem. If you use your left, your throttle stick, you'll be fine. So, but something like that, it'll keep the weight down a little bit more, so you don't build up a little extra weight that you don't need in it. So, I would say a 35 would be probably good for you on that.
All right. Sorry. Oh, I know what it's doing. Let's move on to the next one. I'm still looking for the one.
All right.
Let's let's see.
Did you have the one from Steve Merrill?
Okay, I got it right here. Charles Sankey says, where do I get mufflers for a Ross .60? It's a twin. I don't know if you saw it. I
didn't.
Yeah, I don't know which.
Rossi or?
Yeah, Ross. He says Ross, ROSS .60. It's a gasser. It looks like because it's got little mini spark plugs. But anyways, I guess my recommendation is going to be if you can't find something on eBay or something like that, RC groups. JTech will make a custom muffler. I would contact them. They can get you something. That's probably would be where I would go. So that's the outlet I would say. Have you Bison? They'll make custom exhaust also, right, Lee?
Yeah, they will. There's quite a few of them that will do it. They don't really advertise it, but I don't know if Clio is still in business or not. I heard somebody says they kind of went out or is getting bought out or something like that.
Well, I know they are because they're still making the rings, but I don't know how in depth they get with things. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It might be just the new engines that are coming out and whatnot, popular engines, but like you say, what you just said, JTEC, Bison, what was the other one you said?
That was all I said.
Okay. I thought you said another one.
Yeah, I've always used JTEC. Me personally, I've always used JTEC. I find them to be good.
Yep.
So yeah. But anyways, let's see here. He also has another question on that. He says, or how to make composite silencers if possible. I know nothing about composite silencers.
That's a whole nother. A lot of technical, as far as if you want to tune one or what have you. I mean, there's
I don't really
science.
I don't really know what he's getting at there. If he's talking like composite silencers, like a glass pack, because technically that's a composite silencer. It's using composite to silence it. Or if he's actually talking about making a muffler out of carbon fiber or something. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know exactly.
I know there have been some of them doing it with the high temp carbon fiber and stuff like that, but I haven't personally looked into doing that very much. But like I say, the muffler science is, there's a lot of science that goes into it. You can spend days, weeks researching that to get what you want.
Yeah, so I guess, my answer to that would be, if you're talking about what I consider a composite silencer, I'm thinking like a glass pack, and that's very simple. You put a tube, you punch a bunch of holes in the tube, you get another tube that can slide over that you can seal, that you pack full of basically fiberglass strands.
Yep.
And the fiberglass strands dampen the sound. Basically, a glass pack is what it is. So I got a message from Verizon saying you pay per minute for international calls. Whoops.
Control Alt Delete.
So, all right. So I guess that's what we have on that. Sorry we couldn't be more help on that. I did try to find some stuff out, but the whole composite muffler thing is that's not necessarily what a lot of people are doing, and that's a whole different line of work from the contacts that I have. Everybody that I talked to said JTEC or Bison, get a custom muffler made for it.
Yeah, it's a little above my pay grade as far as that goes.
Yeah, and then we get into the Roger Russell one.
Oh, boy.
He needs help with an engine. He tunes it one day, and he's fine. Next trip out, not so much. It's the Evolution 40GX. I don't even know. Do they still sell that engine?
I believe they do.
Yeah. But I
It's
have the
still
30.
on Horizon site.
Yeah, I have the 33. Runs great. One thing I do know about the Evolution engines is the fuel tanks like to be at the same level or higher than the carburetor, which I think his was, judging by the pictures. And I don't know, now they put pumper carbs on them, so it may not be as big of an issue. But I know that was one of the things, is they would lean out because they had too much I forget the technical term for it, but the fuel had to go uphill, and it was too hard for them to suck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Lee?
Yep. I can't think of the
It's
name of it
just
either.
called head or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Static head.
Static
pressure.
head. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. You're a plumber.
Yep.
So that was one of the
that
issues.
engine is discontinued.
All right. I thought it might be. I think that got discontinued around the time the 26 did, because they came out with the 33.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's neither here nor there. One thing that was pointed out, I asked him to send some more photos and stuff, and he did send a bunch more. He sent some video too. One thing that was pointed out, and I noticed right away too, was his clunk was stuck to one corner. He had to flip his plane upside down. It was in a P-47. Had to flip it upside down so that he could take a picture inside the wing saddle.
Yep.
And his clunk was stuck up in the upper corner. It was the upper left or right hand corner. And that's a sure sign that his fuel tubing is hardened. Once that fuel tubing gets hardened, it could be cracked, so it could be sucking air. It could be loose on one of the fittings sucking air. So that's telling me that there could be a fuel delivery problem. And I guess my recommendation would be to make sure you go through all that stuff, get all that stuff freshened up and new before you start trying to tune the engine, because without that stuff being in perfect condition, you're not going to be able to tune your engine properly.
Exactly. And it kind of goes back to that fuel that we was talking about too. They may have ran ethanol fuel in it, 'cause I know he said he bought that last year at Indiana Warbird campaign. It could be something like that, the rubber tip on the needle valve going in the carburetor, maybe something's damaged there, or that screen may even be plugged up with garbage. I had one several years ago that there was a small piece of flashing from the fuel tank, that there was no filter on the clunk line going to the carburetor that made it all the way to that screen and basically coiled up on that screen and restricted the fuel flow.
Yeah, so I guess my recommendation would be change out your fuel system, make sure your batteries are fresh and good, and maybe check the carb to make sure the screen's done. I don't know if I'd go as far as replacing the gaskets at all yet, but just do that, put it back together, and then try it, see if that works.
Yep.
Now, I'm not one that spends a whole lot of time rebuilding things. I'm not one to tear my whole carburetor apart to rebuild the carburetor. I will put a new carburetor on it and send the old one in to have done, and that would be my next suggestion. If you don't get it running, I would send it to Horizon and have them get it running, because if they can get it running and it runs good and they send it back to you, you're still having the same issues, that's telling me it's something in your airplane then at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and also too, when you're dealing with an engine problem, do one thing at a time. Don't do a bunch of different things, and then you may be chasing problems that you create, trying to fix one other problem. So if you, like Chad said, rebuild the tank, run it. Does it run good? Does it not run good? Then you know that that's not the problem. So, but if you go through, rebuild the carburetor, rebuild the tank, change the timing on it, then you don't know what actually fixed it and what the actual problem was. So that would be my suggestion anyway.
I'm just text messaging my wife quick.
That you called Germany?
No, she's asking when I'm coming in to make dinner.
Ah.
I told her 30 minutes-ish.
There you go.
So hopefully we can get through the rest of the questions in 30 minutes-ish. All right.
One other thing we noticed on Roger's plane too, he was running an 18.6 prop, and the prop range that Evolution's recommending is a 28 to a 2210 prop. So.
Yep.
And
one thing, you can underprop an electric motor, but you do not want to underprop a gasoline engine.
Yeah.
Because it will over rev and that can cause issues. So.
Yes, indeed. All right. So Roger is done.
All right. So now we are on to Mike Pirkle, Pirkl. He says, what's the best way to store an engine used for long term before it goes into a future project, gas and glow? And when it comes time to use that engine, what process should I use to get it going again? We talked about storing the engines. Both Lee and I were pretty much on the same page that we're lazy and we don't do anything. I guess I would recommend at least putting a little bit of oil in it if you know you're storing it for a long time, some after run, or I just use the oil that I mix with my gas. Obviously a glow motor, use some after run or something, and put it through there, spin it over a few times, maybe put it in a Ziploc bag if it fits, or in those big packing bags like I said with the vacuum that you can suck all the air out. That just helps keep the moisture from going in there. And then when it comes time to do it again, anytime I have an engine that's been stored for a while and I bring it back out, I treat it as if it's a brand new engine again. And the first, now I won't go as long, but the first tank, I'll run it a little rich just to loosen everything up. And if there's any kind of corrosion that was getting started for whatever reason, which there shouldn't be, but if there was, it gives it time for that to wear in with a lot of oil. I mean, I would still put some oil in the crankcase and turn it over by hand a few times before you start it to make sure that the oil's all the way through, proper oil, stuff like that. Like Lee said, you can soak the carb in gas to loosen up any varnishing that may be on there, or get the seals and diaphragm and all that re-wet and swelled back up properly.
Exactly.
So,
another little tip for you too, on your, if you're putting it in a Ziploc bag or like Chad's space bag or whatever, sometimes you buy stuff that from the store and they'll actually come with little silica gel packs. You can throw them in there and that'll help dissipate or absorb that moisture so it's not going to the metal.
yeah, and you know, another thing I like to do, I like to keep those, because a lot of people, I see a lot of times people are posting on social media about their glues hardening up real quick and they don't get to use it. It gets hard before they can use it. Save all those little packets, put it in a mason jar when you're not using your glue. Put your glue in there, because the moisture will help kick off the CA glue. So if the least amount of moisture you can get, the longer your glue will stay good. So
exactly,
once it's opened, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So yeah. All right, and Adam Klein asks, how do you set timing?
He had another question too.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, about the spring on the carburetor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got that. It's just later, but we can talk about that now. Go ahead and read it.
Also want to know if it's worth keeping the spring on the return spring on the throttle arm, or should we take it off? Years past, when I first got into it, it was common practice to pull that spring off of there, just so you wasn't fighting the servo, what have you. That was a thought back then. I leave them on now because, like I say, if you have a linkage that comes off, or the arm loosens up, or God forbid you forgot to put the servo arm screw in your throttle servo and it falls off, now at least it's forced back down to an idle or to a closed position, depending on where you have it set at. So my recommendation is leave it on.
And I agree with Lee. I was always taught to take it out. There's one issue with pulling the spring completely out. That spring not only moves the throttle back closed, but it also keeps that butterfly from vibrating back and forth. So even if you don't want the spring action on the throttle, just clip it or unhook it. But leave the spring in there so that it holds the proper tension for the butterfly.
Right.
But the other thing is, I mean, think about the minimal amount of force that spring is actually putting on your servo. And the servos that we use nowadays, it's not drawing any extra to leave that spring on as it is to take it off. And like Lee said, if you ever have it come off, I would rather have my throttle snap to an idle than vibrate to wide open, you know, or something of that sort, or just fluctuate crazy like that. You can't even do whatever you need to do. So my recommendation also is leave the spring on.
There you go.
You know, it helps if you ever store your engine, you know for sure that your throttle is going to be closed.
Yep.
Definitely. You know, so yeah, we're both on the same page there.
Okay.
All right. Adam Klein says, how do you set timing on a radial? I'm assuming what he's talking about is like the timing for the valve timing, just because the ignition, I mean, that's really set with the same way as a single, because it's going to have a magnet for every every cylinder except for like the Mokies, and that's going to have the like I got the top hat ignition for that, but everyone would be different as far as ignition timing. Just like a car, every car for setting your ignition timing was different when it had the distributors and stuff. But there's also the timing for the camshaft, you know, for the valves, and that would be set the same way as a single cylinder. You know, Sato has their little tool that you put in so that when you turn it, you can see where the lobe is, and I mean, there again, it's going to be different for every engine. So I would recommend, I mean, for one, I would recommend sending it. It's so easy to send them to the places to get fixed. And then it's covered and you know it's going to be right. But if you absolutely feel you need to do it yourself, I would find somewhere there should be online some information that shows you how to do it. I did a quick Google and I was able to very quickly find on the Satos how to do it on the Satos and OS engines. You know, you may need to buy a special tool so that you can check where the camshaft is at, but I guess that's how you do that. But there again, I would recommend that if you're getting that deep into it and you need to ask how to do it, chances are you should be sending that in as opposed to trying to do it yourself, especially when you're talking a radial. I think the cheapest radial out there is $1,000.
Yep.
So if you can afford $1,000 engine, you should be able to afford to maintain it. It's like the teenage kid that goes out and buys a BMW car. He can afford the car payments, but the first time it breaks down, he can't afford to fix it.
Yep.
You know, because he's trying to live above his means. So that would be my answer with that. Probably not the answer you were looking for, but I'm not a crazy big mechanic on radials. I tend to send my stuff in and get done because I would assume I would just rather it be done properly by the professionals who are trained to do it. Because it's not I'm in the hobby to build airplanes and fly airplanes, not rebuild motors.
There you go. And I mean, you know, some people that is their little niche, you know, of the hobby that they like to do is tinker with motors and whatever. But
yeah.
I agree with you. You know, if you kind of like the saying, you know, if you have to ask, you may have to be above your head. So
yeah. So.
But the nice thing with the internet now, I mean, pretty much all the manufacturers have usually a PDF file of their manuals or what have you. So the information is readily available versus, you know, 20, 30 years ago where, you know, you had to write in and request a catalog or brochure or maintenance manual or whatever. So.
Well, and I mean, you look at like the Satos, you know, the big Sato radio that I have, that's $1,600. The Moki that I have, that's $4,000. I'm not going to try and fix a $4,000 motor with a chance of doing $2,000 worth of damage if I get it wrong. I would just assume send it in, pay a couple $100, and get it back.
Yep.
You know,
I agree with you.
All right. And then we have a cap for a pipe because I was doing some plumbing work on my basement. And now we have a question from Steve Merrill. Here's my question. I have a DLE 55 and I love it. I crashed a plane it was on, so now the engine is in storage until I can get a new plane for it. So my question, what should I do for long-term storage of a gas engine? My recommendation to Steve would be to private message me. I will give you my address and I will put it on one of my planes so you don't have to worry about long-term storage.
There you go. Yeah. We've always put it in P39s. That's why I got in that. So
yeah. No, you know, I mean we've talked about it a couple times. I'll hit it real quick again. I'm going to tell you the same thing. Put a little oil in it. Put it in a bag. Try and get as much of the air out as possible. If anything, keep it in your house so that it's not getting warm and cold and warm and cold and warm and cold, collecting a bunch of condensation.
Yep, that's the killer right there. Is especially with this time of year. Depending on where you live, you know, that temperature drops and it just condensates. Just look at a car that sits outside, you know, just overnight, all the, you know, when you fire up that car, you'll see all that condensation coming out. And it's because the exhaust temperature is so low now, too. But a lot of that is just that moisture that's gotten into the exhaust system and whatnot, too. So.
All right. And then we have a question from our buddy Noel Hunt.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Who now lives in Arizona. So we never see him.
Yeah.
But anyways, he actually answered his question, Lee. I don't know if you saw this one.
Well, I seen he posted something and I couldn't find it again.
He said, "What's the ideal number of engines to have?" Answer: one more.
That's right.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. And now we have one from Alan Hinton. Sort of engine related. And now, when we ask for these questions, I want everybody to know we don't care if it pertains to the topic that we have at hand. The reason we tell you the topic is because a lot of times it'll draw up questions for people because they'll say, oh, they're talking about, I got this question on an engine. But you can ask any question anytime. I mean, people asked about Lee's hot, sweaty feet.
Yeah. That was a little disturbing, but all right, we went with it though.
Yeah, you can ask any question. It can be a personal question. It can be airplane related. It can be anything, and we'll come up with some story to tell you if we have to.
Yeah. It may not be the truth. It may be a lie, but we're going to tell you something.
It may make us lose some of our viewers. Listeners, I guess. But anyways, he says, sort of engine related. How do you determine how much, if any, down and right thrust should be built into the firewall? I'll take this one. There's a bunch of different ways that people like to do it. I mean, there's the 5 rule that a lot of people use. I didn't necessarily use a 5 rule. I used a 4 rule is what I've always used. But you always have a certain amount of thrust. And if you use the 5 rule, you always have 5 degrees of thrust. So if you put in 2 degrees of down thrust, you would have 3 degrees of drawing a blank.
Right thrust?
Yeah, you'd have 3 degrees of right thrust. And it's the whole left and right thing.
Yeah, it's backwards when you did that.
You know, if you do 3 degrees of down thrust, you'd have 2 degrees of right thrust. If you do 5 degrees of down thrust, you'd have 0 degrees of right thrust. So you always make sure that your total number is 5. If you do the 4 method, which is what I a lot of times do, that would be 2 and 2 or 3 and 1, or you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's how that is. Now, technically, on every plane, you know, a lot of your thrust comes in from airfoil shape to how much down thrust you need. It comes into if it's a high wing, a low wing, a biplane, because drag will also change that. You know, so if it's a high wing, you tend to have more drag above the thrust line, which means you need to have more down thrust. So there's a bunch of variables, and there's no right formula that says if you use this formula, you're going to be perfect every time. That's just not out there.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a bunch of different things, and you know, there's aerodynamic stuff that a lot of people just plain and simply don't know. You know, it's a whole degree just on aerodynamics. You know what I'm saying? You can spend a whole college degree on that. So I'm not going to get into all of them here, but it's basically going to amount from a bunch of different factors. You got your P factor, you got your diameter of the propeller will change it because of the centripetal forces, the gyroscopic forces, stuff like that. Size of motor, how quickly it can rev up that prop will change it. I mean, there's a crap load of different things that change it. But if you use like the 4 or the 5 method, you'll be pretty good. So yeah, I actually talked to Pete a lot about this when I was at his house the last time, and he uses the 5 method, so he'll make sure that there's 5 degrees of thrust in every airplane, whether it's 3 down and 2 right, or 3 right and 2 down. You know what I'm saying? Did I explain that good enough, Lee?
Yeah, except for Peter, I think it would be 2 degrees left thrust instead, because he's from down under, right?
Yeah, so his stuff rotates backwards, and
yeah,
I don't know.
Complicated.
So one of these days, I'm going to try and talk him to being on the podcast with us. So
there you go.
That guy's a wealth of knowledge, which I actually shared his video on our Facebook page that he did on weathering as we were doing the show here. So
check it out. It's and if you can, become his friend or whatever, so you can see some of the posts he puts out. He does, like Chad said, he's a wealth of knowledge, and he's willing to share it too.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. So, all right. Hope we can get it. Oh, here's the mic, the spring one. Here's John Cease. Don't worry, he'll listen to this week's podcast. You never know someday. Oh, John.
Happy birthday, John. In case we didn't tell you that earlier.
I got one from Bernard Adderley.
Okay.
If using natural solar text, do I have to treat that with polybrush before painting? The only time you need to use polybrush on solar text is if you're going to be using an automotive based paint.
Okay.
That was a long silence.
It was.
I'll edit that out too, maybe.
Yeah, it's all right. We're good.
There may be a silence there may not. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe my phone cut out or something. Who knows?
So yeah, but if you're just using like Rust-Oleum or latex or something of that sort, just clean it good with alcohol, let it dry completely, and start spraying.
There you go.
So if you're going to be using like a automotive primer so that you can fill the weave a little bit, then you need to use the polybrush. And one real light coat is enough to do it, just enough to get a chemical bond is all. It's basically a chemical primer is what it is. Then you have me in a Robart shirt with a Henry's hard orange soda while I was working on my basement.
Nice. Nice.
Right. Okay, here's another one. Kevin Dickin.
Yes. The fuel injection.
Yep. Okay, I had asked this once and got nowhere. Will any of the RC engine makers come up with a reliable fuel-injected engine that's not too hard on the wallet? Here's the issue with this, and I talked to Dave Johnson at Desert Aircraft about this because he's got something, but like he said, it's crazy expensive. It's like $2,700. This is the thing. The fuel injectors needed for something our size, they're custom. There's nothing out there. They're making low volume. Anytime you do something low volume like that can't be used really anywhere else, you're talking big money. The other thing is to be able to make the electronics small enough and light enough for our models is another low volume thing. So all these low volumes in production equal big money,
Definitely.
Yeah, so, and then you got the other thing with it being so small and using so little fuel, it just gets super finicky is what it comes down to. There's a lot of, look at your car, go online and look up a fuel injection system for your car and look at all the different sensors that it requires to be on that engine for the fuel injection to work properly. And
it's the same thing with our airplanes too. We fly in air. We can't scale down the air. You're not scaling down the fuel molecules either,
Yeah, so it's and I think they did them by, it's like a throttle body type thing. It's really not fuel injection
per se.
Yeah, it's not multi-port fuel injection, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a throttle body thing, which does make it a little bit easier, but I think I don't foresee in the near future it coming down in price. I don't foresee a huge call for it. I think if anything, the electrics are going to overtake it because more people that are worried about the tuning of the carb and all that stuff are just going to go electric because it's becoming, with the batteries and stuff like that nowadays, it's going to be a world full of John Ceases.
There you go.
So, yeah, as far as the last time I talked with Dave Johnson, which was last Toledo. So
Yep.
about a year ago. He doesn't foresee it coming down in price. I believe his is actually designed for military use, is what they use it for the military drones, and he sold some for the people that had racers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was definitely promising when they first, I know Horizon was introducing it, and then they had a big hold on it. And whatnot.
Yeah, and that's just because there's so many issues that come along with it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like anything.
And-
It may come out in due time, but it's going to take a lot.
And they did the right thing. They basically pulled it back off, pulled it off the market and whatnot because they didn't want to put out an inferior product and
Ruin a name,
Yep, definitely. So I gotta say kudos to them, not just to rush it out there and just so they could sell something and then have a bunch of people mad about it, So they did awesome on that.
All right. I guess that's all the questions. Did you have any more?
I think we covered them all that I seen.
Fan-friggin-tastic.
Right. We already covered the notable events too.
Yeah, well, you know what? As I was scrolling through my pictures, what I do is when I see stuff, I screenshot it so that I can remember it later. And I took a picture. There was a person that posted in Balsa Model Aircraft Builders Association. This kind of goes back to what we talked about last week. But this is a prime example. And there was actually two of them that I saw that I want to talk about.
That's right.
One was talking about a DLE 35 that he's ready to throw in the trash, which anytime you're willing to throw a brand new motor in the trash, by all means, I will pay for the shipping and you can send it to me. I'll even give you $50.
Yeah.
I mean, as simple as that, especially if it's like a DLE 35. That's a deal. And,
Yeah.
He says he checked the reeds, checked all the parts in the carbs. It's getting good spark, getting good suction feel to the carb. But it just pops and goes off. Everybody asked him, why didn't you send it back? Did you contact the manufacturer? All these things that you should do before you put a company on blast on the internet. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's probably an ignition issue, whether the ignition's bad or he has a bad battery or a bad connection. But that's the typical response that you get when you have a bad ignition. You'll flip it a bunch of times and then finally you'll get a pop,
Yep.
and it won't run, or it'll run for a few seconds and then shut down right away. That's
Exactly.
typical of a bad ignition.
Yep. And anymore, the ignitions come down way in price too. So I mean, if it's a brand new engine, send it back. They'll fix it.
I mean, it's an electronic component. You can get a bad ignition. I mean, it's possible. So
Exactly.
Let me see if I can find this other one.
And another thing with electronic ignitions too, you can damage them by not having the spark plug connected. And basically turn it over with the ignition on. You can, because it puts that much more load on the electronics inside of that electronic ignition, that you can actually burn it out or damage it. So always make sure before you turn the ignition on that you have it hooked up to a spark plug. Spark plug doesn't have to be in the engine, but make sure it's to ground of the engine if you want to check for spark or something like that. So, but just so you know, you can damage that.
Bear with me.
Hour tour. Right back into here, tail.
Maybe I'll edit this. Maybe I won't. Well, I guess I can't find it. It was basically on.
Oh wait, Chad, I'm good.
Pouring himself some more drink.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could find it. Anyways, it was about Deluxe Materials. They're super
I remember
phatic
you talking
glue.
about that.
And the guy basically says, "Oh, I got this glue and it sucks. It's the worst glue, blah, blah, blah." And he starts just completely destroying it. And there again, it was another one. Did you contact the... Did you... And it may be removed now, but it was, did you contact the manufacturer? Did you contact them? Did you say anything to them to try and get it rectified before you just completely tried to destroy their name, you know? And one person had commented back, and I really liked it. It basically explained what happens when you do that kind of stuff. And it was, you know, a lot of the RC industry, by industry standards, they're all really small companies. And a lot of really small companies, if you find an issue with their product and bring it to their attention, they're super willing to work with you to improve that product. And they will make it right for you. The other thing is, you know, you ruin their names and now nobody will buy their stuff. They go out of business. What's going to happen? Pretty soon, every single RC company is going to go out of business because one person misuses a product or doesn't use it properly, or there may be a bad batch that went out, and they ruin the name so much. You know, that's the power of social media, I guess. So, you know, you got to be careful with that. We're only ruining our own industry, you know. I know for a fact, and I can't go too much into detail, but we're talking about CA glue. A lot of the different manufacturers that I hear people say, "Oh, I only use this glue. This glue is garbage," and I look at that. I know for a fact those two glues are the same exact glues mixed at the same exact spot. How do I know this? Because I was in the industry. I was in dealing with a company that had glue mixed for themselves. You know, all these little companies, they're not making the glue. They just pay somebody else to mix it and put their label on it.
Yep.
And, you know, when one person says, "Oh, this glue is garbage, this glue is way better, you need to use this glue." Well, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but it's the same exact glue with a different label.
Oh,
you know, I went through trying to reformulate the finishing resin at Balsa USA because I didn't care for it and I refused to sell it. And now they carry the Zap stuff because the person that was mixing their glues couldn't get it to what we wanted it to be. But when we said this is what we want, what do you think we got back? We got back other companies' glues that they just sent to us and said, "Well, how's this? We can mix it like how we mix theirs." You know what I'm saying? So that's what it comes down to when all these people are complaining about these glue companies. There's like 3 cyanoacrylic glue manufacturers in the world. The rest are just mixing the components together so that it's fresher when you get it.
There you go.
So yeah, take that to the bank and cash it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, when you start complaining about stuff, don't complain if you're not going to talk to the manufacturer to let them try and fix it first.
Yeah, and be reasonable about it too. I mean, you know,
at that point, you're just a jackwagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to say a different word, but we're trying to be nice now.
There you go. And we don't have to edit that one.
Yeah, I don't have to edit jackwagon. You're a jackwagon. So.
But no, you know, try to be, you know, think of yourself being in their shoes. You know, if you have a customer that's coming in to complain about something, you know, how would you want to be treated with it? You know, so, you know, if you go in and you know, explain what you have, your issue and whatnot, don't go in there, you know, demanding that, you know, you want their last-born child or first-born child, and, you know, they want half the profits of the company and whatnot. You know, be reasonable about it. You know, say, hey, you know, this product didn't work for me. You know, is there anything we can do about it? You know,
yeah, because I mean, really, when you're dealing with an RC company, you're dealing with somebody who's doing it because they truly love the RC hobby and are trying to help the RC hobby. Because there is no money in the RC hobby. There's not enough sales to make there a bunch of money in the hobby. Why do you think all these companies are going out of business?
Yep.
You know, why do you think Tower Hobbies is in the predicament they're in?
Oh, definitely.
You know, so all right. I guess that's all we got on questions.
All right.
No notable events. I ain't got nothing going on. I'm going to try and still make it to the Blue Max. We will see what happens with if I get a job and if I can get off for it. If I can get off, I believe Pete and I are going to go there together, and we may try and talk Lee into it, but he has nothing to fly anyway, so who cares if he comes?
There you go. I'm working on it. I'm working on 39 more, though.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. I'm not going to lie. I don't blame you. So,
Yeah.
I mean, with
It's been
what's
sitting in my
happened,
garage.
yeah, with what's happened, I feel the priorities have definitely changed. I know mine have. So
Yeah, definitely. So
it was different at one point, but now priorities change. So
Yeah,
I guess
it
that
did.
brings us to the end of the show. Keep
All right.
calm and build the plane.
And just remember, whatever happens in the hangar stays in the hangar.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for listening.
Until next time, guys. See ya.
Bye.
I cast my bets at the surfing club. 21 is the game that I love. Roll them dice and shoot them craps. Stick around, cause I am coming back. And I know someday I'm gonna make it big. I hang out, waiting for another hit. Well, I lost my cool down in Monte Carlo. Better off in a cheaper casino. Spend all my dimes on them velvet tables. Losing my mind whenever I am able.